Chapter 265. Zhang Chun seemed to have something to do. She left without entering the door. Li Mu closed the door again and returned to the courtyard. He had originally planned to start cooking with Xiao Bai. However, the Empress had suddenly arrived, and her intentions were unknown. He couldn't possibly be busy with his own matters and leave the Empress and the others here. Li Mu walked behind the Empress and stood quietly, trying to guess her intentions. Then he realized that he couldn't guess it at all. A woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the ocean. Li Mu could guess what Xiao Bai and Wan Wan were thinking. However, the Empress's thoughts were even harder to guess than Lu Hanyan's. This was because she had two personalities. One was the dignified and serious Empress, and the other was Li Mu's nightmare with unparalleled whip skills. The Empress stood in the courtyard with her back facing Li Mu. She asked, "Are you used to living in this house?" Li Mu nodded and said, "It's just a little big. It's troublesome to clean it up." The Empress turned to look at him and said, "I gave you a maid but you didn't want her. If you don't like the size of this house, I'll change it to a smaller one for you." Li Mu hurriedly said, no need. I'll get used to it. As long as you like it." A big house with 5 entrances was Zhang Chun's lifelong goal. Who would complain that their own house was too big? Li Mu and Xiao Bai lived in such a big house. Naturally, it was a little big. However, Lu Hanyan and Wan Wan hadn't returned yet. If there was a new addition to the family in the future, the house with 5 entrances might still seem small. The Empress asked this question and didn't say anything else. Li Mu waited for her to go somewhere else. However, they didn't seem to have any intention of leaving. Li Mu asked tentatively, "Xiao Bai and I are preparing to cook. Your Majesty, Mr. Mei and Master Shangguan, do you want to have a meal here before you leave?" This was obviously the intention of sending them off. As the ruler of a nation, the Empress would not and could not possibly stay for a meal here. This did not match her identity and status. Li Mu even suspected that she didn't need to eat on a daily basis. Li Mu, who was in the transcendent realm, could already abstain from eating. Did the transcendent realm feed on the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and the essence of the sun and moon? The Empress sat down on the stone chair and said, "Okay." Li Mu was dumbfounded. Couldn't she tell that he was sending her off? If a guest suddenly came to stay for dinner, she should tactfully refuse. Wasn't this a traditional virtue of great Zhou? Li Mu asked, "We haven't started preparing yet. The meal should take a long time. Will it delay His Majesty's handling of state affairs?" Shangguan Li said, "The imperial court has 3 provinces, 6 ministries and 24 divisions. If His Majesty has to deal with every matter, what is the point of having them?" Mr. Mei grabbed Li Mu's arm and said, "Let's go. I'll go help you guys in the kitchen." After being dragged into the kitchen by Mr. Mei, Li Mu knew that they had decided to stay for dinner. Although he and Xiao Bai bought enough food for 2 people to eat for 2 days, and the 5 of them finished it in 1 meal, he didn't lose out. After all, the Empress was probably the only family in the Immortal's capital that could benefit from her. Mr. Mei took care of him like a big sister, so it was only right that he treat him to a meal. The Empress was Li Mu's financial backer, so he had to serve her well. As for Shangguan Li, Li Mu had automatically filtered her out. Li Mu and Xiao Bai made 4 dishes and 1 soup for the 5 of them. It wasn't a sumptuous meal mainly because they didn't buy much. After the dishes were served, the Empress sat at the table while Mr. Mei and Shangguan Li stood behind her. The Empress said, "This isn't the palace. Sit down." Li Mu was hesitant at first, but after hearing what the Empress said, he felt relieved and sat down with Xiao Bai. Mr. Mei and Shangguan Li sat on her left and right, acting more cautiously. They only picked up their chopsticks when the Empress picked up. They would only eat the dishes in front of them. From Li Mu's point of view, being the Empress was meaningless. After sitting on the throne, his family and friends would all change. At least for Li Mu, he would rather not have power than give up these things. Usually, it was just him and Little White at home. When it came to dinner, there were no rules. It was normal for them to chat and laugh. However, with the Empress present, Lord Mei and Gong Sun Li were like guardians, sitting at the side obediently. The atmosphere was a bit tense and the meal was tasteless. The Empress suddenly asked, "Why do you have a fox demon with you?" Hearing this, Xiao Bai was shocked. She immediately put down her chopsticks and moved closer to Li Mu. Li Mu explained, "Before she transformed, I saved her once. After that, I met her again. In order to repay my kindness, she has been by my side ever since." The Empress asked, "Repay my kindness? She's from the Heavenly Fox clan?" Li Mu nodded. The biggest difference between the Heavenly Fox clan and the ordinary Fox clan was that they would repay kindness and revenge and would not be tainted by karma. Hundreds and thousands of years ago, Their ancestors had become heavenly foxes and had passed down their bloodline until now. In fact, there was not much bloodline power left. The Empress stretched out her hand, and a sparkling and translucent crystal bottle appeared in her palm. The crystal bottle was half filled with a bright red liquid. Li Mu didn't know what the liquid was, but Xiao Bai seemed to sense something. She grabbed Li Mu's hand tightly and looked a little scared. The Empress said, "There are a few drops of black fox essence blood here. They are useless to me, but they should be useful to her. Give them to her." Li Mu's eyes lit up. The Fox clan's strength was determined by the number of tails. 1 to 3 tails could only be called demon foxes. 4 to 6 tails could be called spirit foxes. Those who could be called black fox had at least 7 tails, which was equivalent to the 7th realm of human beings. If Xiao Bai could absorb these drops of black fox essence blood, there was a great chance that she could grow another tail and evolve from a demon fox to a spirit fox. Li Mu accepted the crystal bottle for Xiao Bai and said, "Thank you, Your Majesty." The Empress said, "I ate the food she cooked. Just take it as an exchange." This exchange couldn't be more worth it. The black fox essence blood was enough to make all the fox demons fight over it. For more than 100 years no black fox was born in the Great Zhou. Perhaps only the nation of demons had such an existence. As expected of the Empress, she even had such a precious thing and was generous. If she was willing, Li Mu didn't mind quitting his position and becoming her personal chef. After dinner, Li Mu sent the 3 of them out and said with a smile, "Take care. You're welcome to come again." Back in the courtyard, Li Mu instructed Xiao Bai, "Go back to your room first and adjust your magic power to its peak state. I'll guard you tonight. After refining these drops of black fox essence blood, you should be able to evolve." Xiao Bai had been in human form for some time and had an endless supply of spiritual jades. Originally, she still had a long way to go before she could evolve to 4 tails. However, these few drops of black fox essence blood were enough for her to evolve from a demon fox to a spirit fox overnight. Xiao Bai still needed a few more hours to adjust herself to her peak state. Taking advantage of this time, Li Mu returned to the government office first. As soon as he stepped into the office, Zhang Chun walked out from the back of the office. He walked up to him and asked softly, "Has Her Majesty left?" Li Mu replied, "She left after dinner." Zhang Chun sighed. "You're really good in the kitchen. You're virtuous and virtuous. You're a motherly model of the world?" Li Mu looked puzzled. "What are you talking about?" Zhang Chun shook his head. Nothing. Let's talk about Cui Ming. Why don't you ask Her Majesty to issue an edict to behead that beast Cui Ming? It'll save us a lot of trouble." Li Mu glanced at him. "Who do you think I am? Do you think Her Majesty will issue an edict just because I asked her to?" Since Great Zhou had developed until now, the power of the Emperor was actually very limited. The Empress couldn't do whatever she wanted. When officials of the 4th rank or above in Great Zhou or members of the imperial family committed crimes, only the imperial ancestral temple could judge them. The Empress couldn't interfere. Moreover, this matter involved Princess Yunyang, who represented the imperial family of the Xiao clan. Since the Empress ascended the throne, she hadn't gotten close to the Zhou clan or the imperial family of the Xiao clan. If she interfered in this matter, it would be easy to mislead the outside world. They would think that she had made up her mind to suppress the old party of the Xiao clan. This would make the court even more chaotic. Li Mu's duty was to solve the Empress's problems, not to add to her troubles. He couldn't pin all his hopes on Cui Ming's matter on the Empress. It was best to go through the proper channels. Zhang Chun spread his hands and said, "Then there's no other way. Since ancient times, members of the imperial family, relatives of the imperial family, and officials of the 4th rank and above who committed crimes had to be handed over to the imperial ancestral temple. The imperial ancestral temple is the old party. How can they judge him?" Li Mu asked, "What did you plan to do before?" Zhang Chun said, "Since only the imperial ancestral temple has the right to punish Cui Ming, then I'll enter the imperial ancestral temple. Her Majesty intends to reform the court. If she can break the old party's control over the imperial ancestral temple, then she will have the right to punish Cui Ming. Unfortunately, when I went back to the capital to investigate, I found out that since ancient times, the officials of the imperial ancestral temple have been members of the imperial family of the Xiao clan. It's difficult for outsiders to infiltrate." He looked at Li Mu and said leisurely, "Unless you have someone in the secretariat who can take the appointment and dismissal authority of the imperial ancestral temple's officials back to the court." Li Mu heard this and smiled. "Isn't this a coincidence?" Chapter 266. Li Mu had no one in the secretariat, but as the advisor of the Secretariat, he had a lot of say in the reform of the Great Zhou's official selection system. If the Empress was involved in Cui Ming's case, things would become even more complicated. If he could infiltrate the Imperial Clan Temple, everything would become legitimate. The formulation of this Imperial examination policy was the best opportunity. He would go to the Secretariat tomorrow. Today he would help Xiao Bai to guard her and let her complete the transformation from a demon fox to a spirit fox. Night. Li residence. The young girl sat cross-legged on the bed. Li Mu sat cross-legged behind her. His two hands were pressed against her back, continuously transferring the mana in his body into her body. The cork of the crystal bottle placed in front of the bed suddenly opened. The bright red blood flew out of the bottle and entered Xiao Bai's body. These few drops of black fox blood essence contained a large amount of spiritual power. After fusing with Xiao Bai's blood, it made the blood in her body boil and a large amount of white gas emitted from her body. Li Mu used all his mana to help her refine the few drops of black fox blood essence. The young girl's delicate little face was frowning. She bit her lips lightly as if she was enduring great torture. In her body the black fox blood essence was constantly resisting. However, it soon seemed to have sensed something and gradually became gentle. It began to completely merge with her blood. Li Mu also noticed the piece of the black fox blood. These few drops of blood should have sensed the aura of its race. The few drops of blood essence no longer resisted, and the refining process became much easier. Xiao Bai could do it alone. Li Mu had just retracted his hand when he suddenly felt a few fluffy things in his arms. He looked down and found 4 white tails. When a fox demon evolved, it would grow an extra tail. If it could not maintain a complete human form, its tail would appear. Li Mu sat cross-legged behind Xiao Bai. Her tail reached into Li Mu's arms. She used to have 3 tails. Now that she had 4 tails, it meant that she had successfully advanced. The young girl turned around and looked at Li Mu, her charming eyes like silk. Benefactor, I have advanced to 4-tailed. Her beautiful face and enchanting eyes seemed to want to suck Li Mu's soul out of his body. Li Mu recited the clear heart incantation to get rid of her charm. He reached out and knocked on her forehead saying, "Don't charm me." The young girl covered her head and said with grievance, "I didn't." Her pitiful expression made Li Mu's heart flutter again. Li Mu jumped off the bed, arched his back and fled. He said, "I'm going to cultivate in seclusion. Tonight you sleep in your own room." Li Mu fled back to his room and lay on his bed. His heart was still thumping. The charm of a spirit fox was already so powerful. How powerful would the heavenly fox and heavenly fox be? It was no wonder that foxes could become supreme among demons when they had 9 tails. They could compete with 9th realm experts of the human race and the dragon race. This was a racial talent bestowed upon them by the heavens. They could affect the enemy's mental state greatly just by standing there and doing nothing. Tonight, Li Mu had a rare case of insomnia. He lay on the bed, tossing and turning, unable to fall asleep. When he finally fell asleep, Xiao Bai's figure appeared in his mind again. It was not just Xiao Bai. There was also Lu Hanyan and Wan Wan. At first, everything was still under Li Mu's control. Later, for some reason, this dream slipped in a direction beyond his control. This was the aftereffect of being bewitched by Xiao Bai. Li Mu clearly knew that this was wrong, but he was still addicted to it. Lu Hanyan, Wan Wan, Xiao Bai. If not for being bewitched by Xiao Bai, Li Mu would never have dared to dream like this in the past. Suddenly, Li Mu felt like he was being spied on. He turned around and saw a familiar figure standing in the distance. Li Mu shuddered, and his consciousness immediately woke up from the dream. Lu Hanyan, Wan Wan, and Xiao Bai's figures suddenly disappeared. Li Mu looked at the figure in the distance and hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, please listen to my explanation." The figure stood on the spot and gradually disappeared. In the room, Li Mu sat up abruptly on the bed. He recalled the dream just now, as well as the Empress who appeared at the end and witnessed everything. His sleepiness was completely gone. There were no words to describe his current feelings. After seeing the scene just now, his tall and mighty image in the Empress' heart had probably collapsed. He still had to attend court tomorrow. How could he still have the face to appear in front of the Empress? After a sleepless night, Li Mu wanted to ask for leave early the next morning. However, after thinking about it, he could not hide forever. Running away would not solve the problem. As long as he did not feel awkward, the Empress would be the one feeling awkward. After all, she had intruded into someone else's dream without their consent. No matter how one looked at it, she was in the wrong first. There were not many things worth discussing in today's morning court. There were only a few officials who put forward their own suggestions regarding the imperial examinations. The change in the imperial court selection system had already been finalized. The 4 great academies had no objections, and the officials could only accept it. If there was anyone to blame, they could only blame the 4 great academies for not living up to expectations. They could only blame Elder Huang for his selfishness and insisting that Li Mu and Li Mu compete to see who was favored by the heavens. Li Mu hid in a corner of the crepe myrtle hall the entire morning. He did not say a word. He kept feeling that there was a pair of eyes looking at him from behind the curtain. Under that gaze, he seemed to return to his naked state last night. Fortunately, today's morning court ended very quickly. Li Mu could not wait to leave the crepe myrtle hall and head straight for the secretariat. He had come once yesterday. Li Mu and the 6 officials of the secretariat could not be considered friends, but at least they were familiar with each other. Today, the 7 of them continued to discuss the details of the imperial examinations. Li Mu pointed out a point and said, "The imperial examinations need absolute fairness and impartiality. The era of the academies has passed. No matter how high the official is, no matter how long the legacy of the noble family has been passed down, they cannot bypass the imperial examinations and directly recommend." Zhou Xiong retorted, "The power of the 9 distinguished families has existed since the founding of the country. How can you cancel it just because you say so?" Li Mu said, "It's not me who wants to cancel it. It's His Majesty who wants to cancel it." Zhou Xiong snorted, "Don't use His Majesty to scare me. His Majesty has never said such a thing." Li Mu slammed the table and said angrily, "Does His Majesty want me to give advice or you to give advice? Since you like to talk so much, you can speak for me later." "I'm happy to be idle," Lu Yi hurriedly persuaded. "Lordly, calm down, calm down. We can talk things over." The imperial examination system was the first of its kind. The secretariat did not have any experience that could be used as a reference. Without Li Mu's help, it would be impossible to complete such a huge project within a month. Li Mu looked at Zhou Xiong and said, "I strongly suspect that Zhou Sharon is venting his personal grudge against me." They all knew about the matter between Li Mu and Zhou Chu. Zhou Xiong was Zhou Chu's second uncle. Because of Zhou Chu's matter, it was not strange for him to oppose Li Mu. Lu Yi looked at Zhou Xiong and said, "Lord Zhou, the task given by His Majesty is important. Can you put aside your personal grudge for now?" Zhou Xiong snorted and said no more. Li Mu looked at him again and said, "I'll say it first. If Zhou Sharon says another word, I won't care about the imperial examinations anymore." Although Zhou Xiong's expression was angry, he still kept his mouth shut. The imperial examinations were the most important thing for the secretariat. If they delayed it, he could not bear the responsibility. Li Mu pointed to another line and said, "After the imperial examinations are implemented, the officials of the 3 provinces, 6 ministries, 24 departments, 9 temples and 36 counties will all be selected through the imperial examinations. Why is it that the Zongjing Temple is an exception?" Xiao Ziyu looked up at Li Mu. Lu Yi explained, "Lordly, you may not know. Since ancient times, the officials of the Zongjing Temple have always been members of the royal family. In the past, it was not given to the students of the 4 academies." Li Mu shook his head and said, "As the most important system of the imperial court in the future, under the imperial examinations, no matter if it is the 3 provinces, 6 ministries or 9 temples, they must all be treated equally. The Zongjing Temple is no exception." Xiao Ziyu said decisively, "I object. This is an ancestral system. The ancestral system cannot be abolished." Lu Yi and the others did not speak. Although the Shao clan was not entirely part of the royal family of the Great Zhou had a deep relationship with the Shao clan of the 9 families. They had common interests, so naturally they would not give up control of the Zongjing Temple. Lu Yi and the others continued to remain silent. To them, whether the Shao clan controlled the Zongjing Temple or not did not make much of a difference. There was no need for them to interfere. The Zhou clan and the Shao clan had been fighting in the imperial court for 3 years. Although Zhou Xiong hated Li Mu, he supported him unconditionally on this matter. However, Li Mu had already said that if he did not speak, he would not interfere. His lips moved a few times, but in the end he did not speak. Seeing that no one spoke, Li Mu looked at Zhou Xiong and said, "Zhou Sharon, say something. You said so much just now. Why have you become mute?" Zhou Xiong's chest rose and fell. He swallowed his anger and said, "I agree with what Lord Li said. The various ministries of the imperial court should be treated equally. Why is the Zongjing Temple an exception?" Xiao Ziyu said, "The officials of the Zongjing Temple have always been members of the royal family. This was a rule set by the great ancestor." Li Mu smiled and said, If the officials of the Zongjing Temple are all members of the royal family, then the ones in charge of the Zongjing Temple should be the Zhou clan. Lord Zhou, don't you think so? Li Mu hit the nail on the head. Xiao Ziyu could not refute him. Lord Li's words are reasonable. Zhou Xiong quickly agreed. When he looked at Li Mu again, he found that he did not seem as annoying as before. Chapter 267. The Zongjing Temple had always had a special position in the court. Its responsibility was to manage the records of the royal family, the clan and the relatives, and to protect the ancestral shrine. If the royal family or relatives violated the law, they would be handed over to the Zongjing Temple. Not only that, but to protect the dignity of the royal family, the Zongjing Temple's punishment was usually kept secret. To some extent, this was the privilege of the royal family. The Zongjing Temple gradually became the place of protection for the royal family. During the reign of the previous emperor, the power of the Zongjing Temple was further expanded. If an official of the fourth rank or above violated the law, they could only be judged by the Zongjing Temple. This gave the Zongjing Temple absolute power. The Xiao clan used this to suppress their dissidents and protect their own people. When Zhou Zhong was reforming the law, he once proposed to abolish the Zongjing Temple's absolute power. However, he met with great resistance and did not succeed in the end. After the empress succeeded the throne, many of the rules of the previous emperor's reign were continued. The Zongjing Temple was no exception. Now, Li Mu wanted to interfere with the Zongjing Temple controlled by the Xiao clan. This was equivalent to weakening the influence of the old faction of the Xiao clan in the court. In the secretariat, Xiao Ziyu, who represented the interests of the Xiao clan, naturally would not agree. On the other hand, Zhou Xiong, who had a grudge against Li Mu, had a common interest with him in this matter. For the Zhou clan, any action to attack the old faction was what they wanted. Li Mu looked at Xiao Ziyu and said, "Don't mention the ancestral system to me. All pedantic and backward systems should be reformed and abolished. Such an important department like the Zongjing Temple should not be monopolized by one family. The Zongjing Temple belongs to the court and His Majesty, not the Xiao clan." Lu Yi and the other officials of the secretariat were speechless. Li Mu's words were still so straightforward, breaking the rules and hitting the nail on the head. Xiao Ziyu frowned. If it was Zhou Xiong who objected, he could still argue with him. However, the interests of the Imperial Clan Temple had nothing to do with Li Mu. His words were completely from the standpoint of an outsider. He was speaking for the sake of the justice of the Imperial Court. No one could be so righteous as to oppose justice with selfishness. Li Mu continued, "If you insist on the ancestral system, then all the officials of the Zheng Temple today should be the Zhou clan and not the Xiao clan." Zhou Xiong immediately said, "This official agrees with what Lord Li said." Xiao Ziyu didn't understand. The royal Xiao family hadn't offended Li Mu. Instead, it was the Zhou family that had a life and death grudge with him. Why did he insist on speaking for the Zhou family? More importantly, he could not refute Li Mu's words. If he insisted on the ancestral system, then the Zhou family would definitely not let go of the ancestral system. At that time they might lose everything. If he agreed to the restructuring, the Imperial Ancestral Temple would still be the current Imperial Ancestral Temple. The officials who entered the Imperial Ancestral Temple through the Imperial examinations would definitely start from the bottom and would not affect the overall situation. After comparing the two, he quickly came to a decision. He smiled and said, "I was too narrow-minded. Sir Li is right. The Imperial Ancestral Temple is the Imperial Ancestral Temple of the court. It should be treated the same as all the other ministries and should not be independent of the Imperial examinations." Walking out of the secretariat, Li Mu's face flashed with a smile. Breaking the monopoly that the old faction of the Xiao clan had over the Zongjing Temple was the first step in his and Zhang Chun's plan. As for the second step, it was to find a way to infiltrate the Imperial Clan Temple. He looked back and walked out of the palace. Inside the secretariat, Xiao Ziyu stood in front of Cui Ming and said, "Li Mu proposed that the officials of the Imperial Ancestral Temple should be elected by the court in the future." "I agree." Cui Ming frowned and asked, "What does the Imperial Ancestral Temple have to do with him? What is this Li Mu doing?" Xiao Ziyu said, "I feel that he should not have any other motives. This person does not have any selfish motives. Perhaps he is truly dedicated to the country." Cui Ming said, "There is no need for outsiders to interfere with the Imperial Ancestral Temple. This is a deterrent to the officials of the fourth rank and above. How can we just give it to someone else?" Xiao Ziyu shook his head and said, "Things are not that simple. To be precise, the current imperial family is the Zhou family. According to the rules, All the officials of the Imperial Ancestral Temple should be held by the Zhou family. I agree with Li Mu that the Imperial Ancestral Temple should temporarily belong to the Xiao clan. If I disagree, the Zhou family can immediately replace it. Cui Ming thought for a moment and realized that the old party did not have a choice. In other words, they could only choose to be swallowed up in a short period of time or slowly nibbled away. Let's do as he said. No matter what, we can't let the Zhou family interfere with the Imperial Ancestral Temple. Cui Ming thought for a moment and said, keep an eye on Li Mu. If he does anything else, inform me. Back in the divine capital, Zhang Chun walked out of the yamen and asked, how is it? Li Mu nodded and said, everything is going according to plan. Zhang Chun sighed and said, I didn't expect His Majesty to let you participate in this level of national affairs. The decision-making officials of the Secretariat, the assistant ministers, and the officials of the Secretariat, which one of them does not have a deep background, Li Mu said, this is only the first step. Next, we need to infiltrate the Imperial Ancestral Temple. This person, Zhang Chun said, let me do it. Li Mu was greatly surprised. Could a middle-aged man's jealousy really change a person's personality? Zhang Chun was always timid. When he encountered trouble, he would run away if he could and hide if he could. This time he actually took the initiative to step forward, which really surprised Li Mu. Zhang Chun said, I still have no idea how to enter the Imperial Ancestral Temple. Li Mu said, let me think of a way. As long as the Imperial Ancestral Temple was no longer monopolized by the Xiao family, it would not be difficult to arrange for him to enter the Imperial Ancestral Temple through various methods. However, Zhang Chun's changed personality made it difficult for him to adapt. Could it be that he also felt that he had offended too many people in the divine capital and decided to give up? Or had he found a new backer? Zhang Chun walked straight back to the yamen and poured 2 cups of wine. He said, to celebrate the smooth progress of the plan, let's have a drink. He picked up the wine cup and drank it in one gulp. Li Mu also picked up the wine cup. After taking a sip, he felt that the taste was a little strange and asked, what wine is this? Medicinal wine. Zhang Chun smacked his lips and said, this is my collection. This wine is brewed with deer antler more than 300 years old, ginseng and other medicinal herbs. There's also a tiger penis that transformed into a tiger demon. If you like it, I can give it to you. Li Mu suddenly spat out the mouthful of wine that had just taken a sip. Zhang Chun said with heartache, don't waste it. Not only can this wine strengthen the body, it's also good for passing down the ancestral line and having children. Li Mu returned home and cursed Zhang Chun in his heart. This medicinal wine had a strong medicinal effect. It did not affect the mind but the body directly. After drinking it, the body would react within 15 minutes. Reciting the Clear Heart Sutra would be useless. Zhang Chun had a wife and a family. He could make up for it however he wanted. He only had a fox at home that he could see but could not touch. How was he going to pass the long night? Besides, he was a theurgy cultivator. He had already refined the 7 spirits and could control the sparrow shade freely. He did not need such a thing. As for having children, that was even more nonsense. Lu Hanyan was not around. How was he going to have a child with a ghost? Li Mu cursed Zhang Chun's lame joke in his heart. When he walked to the door, Xiaobai was already there to welcome him. Now that she had grown an extra tail, her charm had increased imperceptibly. Her figure and face had matured a lot compared to when she was 3 tails. Li Mu could not help but gulp. He felt that this action was a little strange and said awkwardly, what did you cook today? It smells so good. Xiaobai was stunned. Benefactor, you came back early today. I haven't started cooking yet. Li Mu strode into the yard and said, then I'll go cook. You go to the room to cultivate. I'll call you when it's done. Xiaobai trotted over and said, then I'll help you, benefactor. As Xiaobai's cultivation improved, Li Mu realized that his control over her was starting to be insufficient. Especially when she climbed into Li Mu's bed at night. That night, Li Mu fell into a dream again. He woke up early in the morning and went to the Divine Capital Government. Stepping into the courtyard of the Divine Capital Government, Li Mu was surprised to see a figure he had not seen for a long time. He strode to Li Si and asked in surprise, why are you here? Chapter 268. Li Si smiled and said, Miao Miao is focused on cultivating on Mount Baiyun. My father-in-law asked me to come to the Divine Capital to see the world and participate in the Imperial examination in 3 months. I don't have many friends in the Divine Capital, so I came to find you and Lord Zhang. The Empress had already informed all the counties to select some talents to participate in the first imperial examination in the divine capital. The people who participated in the imperial examination would be selected by the local government for the first time. When the imperial examination system was perfected, even the local talents would have to go through a fair selection. With Li Si's background, it was not difficult for him to get a spot in the North County. It seemed that County Governor Chen's expectations for Li Si was not just a constable. Li Mu's cultivation had reached the 4th realm. It was easy to see that in just 2 months, Li Si had stepped into the spirit realm. In the past 2 months, County Governor Chen must have spent a lot of resources on him. Zhang Chun looked at the 2 of his former subordinates and felt emotional. A year ago, the 2 of them were constables in Xianxia County and had not stepped into cultivation. A year later, Li Si was already in the spirit realm, and Li Mu had stepped into the middle realm. One of them was with the county governor of the North County, and the other was favored by the Empress. He could not help but sigh. It was good to be young. 3 months later, the imperial examination would begin. Li Si temporarily stayed in the inn. After leaving the court at noon, Li Mu and Zhang Chun welcomed him at the inn. When the 3 of them walked out of the divine capital and walked to the fragrance inn, the streets were noisy again. The prince's son-in-law is still so handsome. There's no other man in the divine capital who has his temperament. Ah, my legs go soft when I see the prince's son-in-law. Chui Ming was walking slowly on the streets as usual. As the prince's son-in-law and the assistant minister of the secretariat, he did not ride a horse or take a sedan. Every day he walked through the streets and attracted the attention of the women in the divine capital. Li Mu suspected that he was using these women to cultivate. Every time he appeared, these women would develop a strong desire for him. Some special cultivation techniques just happened to require the 7 emotions to cultivate. Li Mu couldn't see Chui Ming's lust, but judging from the situation of those women, his guess should be right. In the cultivation world, it was forbidden to steal the souls of mortals, but it was possible to obtain their 7 emotions. As long as one didn't absorb too much, this was also a righteous cultivation method. Chui Ming walked through the street. Zhang Chun looked at Chui Ming with disdain as usual. Even the way he looked at the women around him was filled with disdain. Li Si's gaze lingered on Chui Ming for a long time before he said, "This person is not simple." This was probably a kind of connection between experts. Chui Ming and Li Si were very similar in certain aspects. They were all very popular with women. But they were also fundamentally different. Li Si was a prodigal son. Although he appeared to be passionate, he was actually very loyal. Chui Ming was a beast. Although he appeared to be passionate, he was actually heartless. At the Aroma restaurant, the 3 of them ordered a table of dishes. While they were eating, Li Si said, "Before coming to the Immortal's capital, I went to White Cloud Mountain. Lady Han Yen asked me to bring you some things." Li Mu put down his chopsticks and asked, "What is it?" Li Si took out a thick stack of fulu from his sleeve and passed it to Li Mu. Li Mu took it and felt that it was quite heavy. He flipped it open and took a look. Among these talismans there were sword talismans, 5 elemental escape talismans, and high-grade divine travel talismans. Although there weren't any heaven-grade talismans, none of them were lower than earth-grade talismans. How was this heavy fulu? It was clearly heavy love. Li Mu put away the fulu and sighed. He wanted to fly to North County right now and fly to her and Wanwan's side. But Chui Ming was not dead, so he could not leave the divine capital. After eating, Zhang Chunyan and Li Si returned to the government office and the inn. Li Mu took the token that Mr. Mei gave him and entered the palace to the secretariat. Lu Yi stood at the entrance of the secretariat. She had been waiting for a long time. When she saw Li Mu, she finally let out a sigh of relief and said, "If Lord Li did not come, I would have gone out to invite you." There were only 3 months left until the imperial examination. But until now, the secretariat had not even discussed a perfect imperial examination system. After the system was perfected, it would be submitted to the secretariat for review and then to the secretariat for implementation. This would delay a lot of time. If it delayed any longer, the imperial examination would be delayed. In the end, they would be the ones to take the blame. Over the past 2 days, after endless discussion, Li Mu had gone from being an advisor to being the leader. Every idea he put forward regarding the imperial examinations was reasonable and flawless. It could be said that whether or not the Hall of Governmental Affairs could complete the task the emperor had given them depended entirely on Li Mu. Li Mu smiled and said, "I met a friend I had not seen for a long time this morning. We had a good chat and came a little late. Please forgive me, Lord Lu." Lu Yi waved her hand and said, "It's okay. Let's go in quickly. The lords have been waiting for a long time." 2 days ago, everyone had discussed the details of the imperial examination. But there was still an important problem that had not been solved. The imperial examination was a way to produce court officials. It was very important. So which department of the court should be responsible for such an important matter? Everyone knew that no matter which department was responsible for the imperial examination, that department's position in the court would be greatly improved. Both the new party and the old party were not willing to let go of this opportunity. Zhou Xiong suggested the Ministry of Rights because the Minister of Rights was a member of the new party. Xiao Ziyu suggested the Ministry of Appointments because the imperial examination produced officials. The Ministry of Appointments was responsible for the imperial examination. Of course, everyone present knew that the Ministry of Personnel from top to bottom, from inside to outside, was supported by the old faction of the Xiao clan. The Ministry of Personnel was in charge of the imperial examinations, which meant that the old faction was in charge of the imperial examinations. This was yet another confrontation between the new party and the old party. It was clear that neither party wanted to give in on the matter of the imperial examination, nor would they give in. The other four officials did not want to participate in the battle between the new party and the old party. They tacitly kept silent. At this time, Li Mu cleared his throat and said, "Since the two of you have different opinions, then let me say something fair." Everyone looked at Li Mu. Li Mu looked at them and said slowly, "The imperial examination is a very important matter. It concerns the future of the court. If any department is responsible for it alone, it could lead to arbitrary monopolization. It is not good for the stability of the court. Since one of you suggested the Ministry of Rights and the other suggested the Ministry of Appointments, why don't we let the Ministry of Appointments and the Ministry of Rights handle it together? The two departments will supervise each other and maintain the fairness of the imperial examination. What do you think? Let Zhou Xiong and Xiao Ziyu continue to be in a deadlock, and the discussion would never be able to progress." Li Mu's suggestion was a good solution. Lu Yi thought for a while and said, "Lord Li is very thoughtful." Wang Shi nodded and said, "I agree with Lord Li. Let's let the Ministry of Rights and the Ministry of Appointments handle it together." Zhang Huili and Song Liangyu also agreed. Out of the 6 officials, 4 expressed their opinions. Zhou Xiong and Xiao Ziyu looked at each other and did not argue. It was a tacit agreement. If they continued arguing like this, there would never be a result. As long as the authority of the imperial examination was not monopolized by the other party, they would have achieved their goal. At this moment, Li Mu spoke again. He looked around at everyone and said, "Although the imperial examination is jointly managed by the Ministry of Rights and the Ministry of Appointments, there is no guarantee that the officials of the two departments will not collude with each other and shake the foundation of the Great Zhou's selection of officials. Why don't we let the Imperial Clan Temple supervise and completely prevent the officials of the two departments from colluding with each other? What do you all think?" They thought for a while and felt that Li Mu's words made sense. Although everyone knew that the Ministry of Appointments and the Ministry of Rights could not collude, it did not mean that they would not in the future. Now, the two departments represented the interests of different parties. But what about 10 years later, decades later, or centuries later? It was clear that Zhou Xiong and Xiao Ziyu were focused on the present. Li Mu was worried about the future. As expected, he had the heart to create eternal peace for the Great Zhou. As for why it was the Imperial Clan Temple, no one thought about it. After all, the officials of the Ministry of Appointments and the Ministry of Rights were not low-ranking officials. Only the Imperial Clan Temple was qualified to intimidate and punish the officials of the two departments. Li Mu continued, "There are not many officials in the Imperial Clan Temple. Now there is only one Temple Chancellor, one Vice-Chancellor and one Deputy Temple Chancellor. The rest are low-ranking officials. Now they are handling the affairs of the temple. Naturally there is enough manpower. If we add the supervision of the Imperial examination, I'm afraid that you will be too busy. Do we need to expand the number of officials in the Imperial Clan Temple?" Lu Yi thought for a while and praised, "Lord Li is really meticulous. You have taken care of everything." Wang Shi said, "We did not think of this at all. Fortunately, Lord Li reminded us." Song Liangyu said, "In that case, send a letter to the Ministry of Appointments and ask the Ministry of Appointments to ask His Majesty to expand the number of officials in the Imperial Clan Temple as soon as possible." An hour later, in the Assistant Minister's office of the Secretariat, Cui Ming put down his teacup and said slowly, "Although we did not obtain the right to hold the Imperial examination, we did not let the Zhou family get it either. This result is already very good. As for the Imperial Clan Temple, why does Li Mu keep holding on to the Imperial Clan Temple? Xiao Ziyu said indifferently, "Anyway, the Imperial Clan Temple is our people. It doesn't matter." Cui Ming frowned and said, "I keep feeling that he is plotting something. Forget it, I must be thinking too much." Chapter 269. The expansion of the Zongjing Temple was a very complicated matter. First, the Hall of Secretaries had to make a decision and hand it over to the Hall of Secretaries. If the Hall of Secretaries felt that it was necessary, they would hand it over to the Minister of State Affairs. The Minister of State Affairs had no objections. Finally, the order would be passed to the Ministry of Appointments. The Ministry of Appointments would register and appoint new officials. It took quite a bit of time to pass down the government decrees between the various departments. If it was in the past, this matter could drag on for months to half a year. However, this time, in just 2 days, the Ministry of Appointments had already confirmed this matter and added a Shaoqing and a deputy to the Zongjing Temple. The Hall of Secretaries passed down the suggestion, and it was approved by the Hall of Secretaries. After it was passed to the Hall of Secretaries, the Hall of Secretaries immediately ordered the Ministry of Personnel to carry it out. The imperial examination was the most important matter in the imperial court. Time was tight and there was no room for delay. Now they only needed to decide who would take over the positions of Shaoqing and deputy to form a balance between the 3 departments. Great Zhou's official selection system had to do with the rank of the officials. Officials of rank 3 and above were personally selected by the emperor. Officials of this rank were the heads of their departments and only the emperor had the power to appoint and move them. Officials above the 5th rank were nominated by the palace secretary and decided by the Minister of State. Finally, they were submitted to the emperor for approval, and the Ministry of Appointments would listen to the rules and confer officials. Officials below the 5th rank were conferred by the Ministry of Appointments after reporting to the Minister of State for approval based on the officials' assessment results. Shaoqing was a secondary rank 4 official, while the Zongjing deputy was a primary rank 5 official. They needed to be nominated by the Hall of Secretaries and then passed to the Minister of State Affairs for final decision. Regarding the choice of Shaoqing, Zhou Xiong and Xiao Ziyu, who represented the new and old parties, started arguing again. Xiao Ziyu chose an official from the old party, but Zhou Xiong naturally did not agree. The Zongjing Temple was originally in the hands of the old party. If it was still someone from the old party after the expansion, then wouldn't all his previous efforts be wasted? Seeing that the two were in a stalemate, Lu Yi finally could not help but say, "Since the two of you cannot agree, I will choose another person." Lu Biao, the imperial censor, is impartial and has the trust of the people. He can take the position of Shaoqing. Everyone looked at Lu Yi. Lu Yi was obviously taking the opportunity to promote the Lu family's descendants. The officials of the imperial censorate were responsible for impeaching the officials and did not have much real power. However, it was different after entering the imperial censorate. Especially now that the imperial censorate had the responsibility of supervising the imperial examinations, the position of vice minister was one of the hottest positions in the imperial court. The few of them also wanted to compete, but none of them had the qualifications to take up the position of clan head, so they could only give up. The reason why Xiao Ziyu proposed the old party members was to prevent Zhou Xiong from arranging the new party members into the Zongjing Temple. Although Lady Lu was not part of the new party, she had always been neutral. Letting Lu Biao be the Zongjing Shaoqing was better than having someone else. The person he nominated still had to be decided by the Minister of War. The Minister of War was the leader of the new party. It was unlikely that he would agree with the people of the old party. He finally looked at Lu Yi and said, "Censor Lu is fair and impartial. I have nothing to say about him sitting in this position." Zhou Xiong looked at Lu Yi and did not object. Although he wanted to arrange his own people to enter the Zongjing Temple, Xiao Ziyu would not agree. If he insisted, he would offend Lu Yi. He could only say, "I also agree." He and Xiao Ziyu looked at each other and saw some information from each other's eyes. The dispute between them could not continue in this way. Otherwise, if the two of them were in a deadlock every time, the one who would benefit in the end would be the outsiders. Xiao Ziyu's lips moved slightly and said a few words to Zhou Xiong. Zhou Xiong looked at him and also moved his lips. The two of them looked at each other and seemed to have reached some kind of agreement. There was only one imperial censorate position left. Xiao Ziyu nominated another person from the old party. It was rare that Zhou Xiong did not object. Anyway, the people in the Zongjing Temple were all from the old party. It did not matter if there was one more or one less. Lu Yi and the others also did not raise any objections. Just when everyone was about to continue the discussion, a voice suddenly sounded. I object. Li Mu looked at Xiao Ziyu and said, in the future the Zongjing Temple will not only deal with the affairs of the imperial family, but also supervise the imperial examinations. It will be responsible for the cases of officials of the 4th rank and above. It is not enough to have one just and strict official. The Shindu magistrate Zhang Chun is selfless and is more suitable for this position. Xiao Ziyu said, isn't he already the Shindu magistrate? Li Mu said, before Zhang Chun, the position of Shindu magistrate was also held by other officials. He can hold the position of Shindu magistrate and imperial censorate deputy at the same time. Xiao Ziyu shook his head and said, there is no need for that. The Shindu magistrate has a heavy responsibility. If he holds the position of imperial censorate deputy at the same time, he will not be able to handle both sides well. Lu Yi and the others also said, Lord Xiao is right. We have wasted too much time today. Let's quickly discuss the follow-up matters. Everyone agreed. Li Mu covered his mouth and yawned. He said, let's end it here today. I'm a bit sleepy. Lords, please continue your discussion. I will return to the office to rest. They looked at Li Mu in shock. Any magical power cultivator could go days without sleep. How could he be sleepy so early in the morning? Unless he did something last night and used up a large amount of essence and spiritual power. The problem was, Li Mu was still full of energy and gave them many wonderful ideas. Why was he suddenly sleepy? It was clear that he was dissatisfied with the fact that his proposal to nominate Zhang Chun as the deputy of the Imperial Clan Temple was rejected by everyone. Xiao Ziyu looked at Li Mu and said, since Lord Li is sleepy, please go back and rest. Li Mu stood up and said, oh right, there is one more thing. I will be returning to the North region to visit my family tomorrow. I will not be back for half a month. Lords, please do not wait for me tomorrow. Louis was stunned. Visit your family? Li Mu nodded and said, I have been separated from my wife for more than 2 months. I really miss her. I hope you can forgive me. After a few days of discussion, the few officials of the Secretariat were very clear that in the process of perfecting the imperial examination system, they could do without any of them except for Li Mu. When the imperial court wanted to promulgate a policy as important as the imperial examination, it would often take half a year, or even several years of preparation to ensure that there would not be too many mistakes. It was not difficult for them to come up with a system to replace the Academy's selection of officials within a month. The difficult thing was that this system had no loopholes or flaws. Once the system was implemented, how would they explain it to the imperial court if they found the flaws in it? Li Mu had a deep understanding of the imperial examination system. Up until now, the framework of the imperial examination system was almost entirely built by him. Now was the most critical moment. If Li Mu left, the subsequent perfection of the imperial examination system would immediately be lost. Lu Yi hurriedly said, Lord Li, you can wait for a while about the family visit. The imperial examination is the most important thing now. I hope you can put the country's affairs first. Li Mu thought for a while and nodded. Lord Lu, you are right. I am narrow-minded. How can personal affairs be compared to national affairs? So he sat down again and said, let's continue. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Lu Yi continued to talk about a problem that had not been solved yet. As for the number of candidates sent by the 36 counties, how should we determine it? If the 36 counties are the same, it will be unfair to the large counties with a large population like the Middle region. If they are not the same, I am afraid that the other 30 counties will have objections. We must have a reasonable arrangement to stop people from talking. Many times, it was not a matter of whether the policy was feasible or not. It was a matter of whether it was reasonable or not and whether it could convince the public. The discussion was fruitless and they habitually looked at Li Mu. Louis asked, Lord Li, what do you think? Li Mu shook his head and said, I don't have any opinions. Louis thought that he really did not have any opinions. He shook his head and said, then let's put this matter aside for now. Let's continue to discuss the next matter. When they discussed again, they saw Li Mu frowning and shaking his head slightly. They knew that he was dissatisfied with the results of the discussion. Based on his experience in the past few days, he was always able to come up with better and more perfect suggestions. Louis looked at Li Mu again and asked, does Lord Li have any better ideas? No. Li Mu shook his head and stood up. He said, it is getting late. I should go back and cook. Lords, see you tomorrow? They looked at each other and suddenly understood something. Louis lowered his head and was silent for a moment. He suddenly said, I think that there is still room for discussion as to who should be the deputy of the Imperial Clan Temple. Wang Shi said, "The person that Lord Xiao just nominated is not qualified enough. I am afraid that he will not be able to convince the public." Zhang Huili agreed. "I think that the Shindu prefect Zhang Chun is qualified for the position of the Imperial Clan Temple Deputy." Song Liangyu said, "Lord Zhang is impartial. No one is more suitable for this position. Lord Xiao, what do you think?" Xiao Ziyu was stared at by everyone. He knew that the duck that he had just cooked was about to fly away. At the same time he received a message from Lu Yi and the others. "Lord Xiao, the big picture is more important. Don't delay the schedule for a little personal gain. It is just a 5th rank official. If he wants it, then give it to him." Xiao Ziyu's face was gloomy. The 4 officials of the Secretariat sent him messages at the same time. Under such circumstances he had no other choice. He took a deep breath and calmed down. He said, "I will listen to you, lords." Zhou Xiong was naturally happy that someone from the old party could not be the deputy of the Imperial Clan Temple. He said, "I have no objections." Just like that, the Shindu prefect Zhang Chun, as a fair and impartial official who was not afraid of the powerful and dared to speak up for the people, was elected unanimously in the Secretariat. He successfully held the position of the Imperial Clan Temple Deputy. Li Mu sat down and said, "I will not starve to death even if I skip a meal. The Imperial examination is more important. What do you think, lords?" Everyone put on a fake smile. Lord Li is really righteous. Chapter 270. Zhang Chun had only been in Fairy's capital for a short period of time. In just 2 months, he had been promoted from Divine Capital Commandant to Fairy's Capital Magistrate. This was already an unbelievable speed. It was impossible for him to hold the position of Imperial Ancestral Temple's deputy. However, Li Mu's attitude was clear. He would not give this position to Zhang Chun. He would not care about the Imperial examinations anymore. This was a blatant threat, but the 6 of them could do nothing about it. He had the right to threaten them. For this matter, it didn't matter if any of the 6 Imperial Secretaries of the Secretariat were missing, but Li Mu couldn't be missing. Even if he was threatened, he could only grit his teeth and accept it. It was just a small Imperial Ancestral Temple's deputy. Compared to the Imperial examinations, it was not worth mentioning. After an hour, Li Mu left the Imperial Secretariat. Cui Ming paced around the Assistant Minister's office and muttered, "Imperial Ancestral Temple, it's Imperial Ancestral Temple again. Why is it always the Imperial Ancestral Temple? What is this person trying to do?" After leaving the Imperial Secretariat, Li Mu did not return to the office or go home. Instead he went to the great music bar. "Brother-in-law, you haven't been here in a long time. I just learned a new song. I'll play it for you later. Where's your little follower? Why isn't she here today?" In the backyard of the great music bar, Chimey, Little 76, and the other girls surrounded Li Mu and chattered. Li Mu said, "I've been busy with work recently. I'll visit you guys when I have time." He called Chimey to the side and asked, "Do you have a theater in Fairy's capital?" Chimey was puzzled. "Why are you asking this? Do you want to watch a play?" "The owner has a theater and business is not bad," Li Mu said. "Call your owner out." Chimey did not know what Li Mu wanted to do, but it still obediently called the owner of the great music bar over. The owner of the Miaoying Lane was a middle-aged woman. When she saw Li Mu, her face was full of smiles. She jogged over and said, "Oh Lord Li, what wind blew today that brought you here?" In the past, the great music workshop was just an ordinary workshop in Luoyang. There were dozens of such workshops in Luoyang. The musicians in the workshop would sometimes be bullied when they met guests with power and influence. Ever since Jianghu was beheaded, such a thing had never happened. All of this was naturally because of Li Mu. The owner of the Miaoying Lane had already instructed that as long as Constable Li came here in the future, the lane would not take a single cent from him and would even arrange the best seat for him. With such a backer in Luoyang, she would be able to earn money in peace in the future. Li Mu went straight to the point and asked, "I heard that you have a theater in the Fairy's capital?" The middle-aged woman was stunned for a moment but quickly reacted. She said, "Does Constable Li like to listen to plays? I'll arrange it for you right away. Just tell me what you want to listen to and I'll arrange it for you," Li Mu explained. "I'm not here to listen to plays. I have a favor to ask of you." The Pear Blossom Pavilion was located in the Rosy Lane of Luoyang. It was a rather famous theater in the Fairy's capital. The cultured people of Luoyang liked to hang out in theaters and music halls. Although actors and actresses were of low status and were often looked down upon by others, theater was an elegant art in the eyes of the influential people in Luoyang. Many influential people had musicians and actors and actresses in their homes so that they could listen to them sing and dance at any time, especially the women. Some of the noble ladies in Luoyang were good at this. It was said that in the Western Palace, one of the concubines of the late emperor was a famous actress in Luoyang. Later the late emperor took a fancy to her and she became a phoenix. When the late emperor was still alive he liked theater very much. He would often gather his officials to watch the performances in the palace together. The theater culture in Luoyang rose at that time and had not declined to this day. He abandoned his wife and child and even wanted to kill his wife and child. Such a beast is not worthy of being a human. There are such stories in theater. How can there be such a heartless person in reality? Reality is often scarier than theater. However, the scene of the heartless person being struck by lightning at the end was too satisfying. A few guests walked out of the Pear Blossom Pavilion and were still discussing a new play that had just been released a few days ago. The play was called Qin Shimi. It was about a heartless man who abandoned his wife and child in order to get close to a princess and enjoy the glory and wealth. He even killed people to keep them quiet. In the end, he was judged by an upright official and was struck to death by the heavens. The plot of the play was complicated and bizarre. The story was interconnected and had many twists and turns. The ending was satisfying. Once it was released, it quickly spread in Luoyang. Many theaters had already smelled the business opportunity and bought the script from the Pear Blossom Pavilion at a high price, preparing to imitate it. The storytellers in the tea houses and brothels were one step ahead of them. They turned the play into a story and acted it out vividly to attract customers. On the streets of Luoyang, there were also passers-by who hummed the lines from Qin Shimi as they walked. It had been a long time since such a good play had appeared in Luoyang. Once it was released, it had a very high popularity among the common people. Imperial Secretariat. A manager sat in the yamen. As he organized the plan for the imperial examination, he hummed, "Su the current emperor's son-in-law. Deceiving the emperor, disrespecting the emperor, killing his wife and child, losing his conscience." This was the new play that he had heard with his wife in a theater in Luoyang yesterday during his break. The lines in the play were very classic. He remembered it after listening to it once. As he hummed, he suddenly felt a chill down his spine. He could not help but shiver. He turned his head and saw Left Assistant Minister Cui Ming standing behind him. His face was as dark as water. The manager was shocked. He immediately stood up and said respectfully, "Lord Assistant Minister." Cui Ming's face was cold. He asked, "What did you say just now?" The manager said nervously, "It's just a few lines from the play. I just sang it casually." Cui Ming said coldly, "Sing it again." The manager was stunned for a moment. He then sang honestly, "Su the current emperor's son-in-law. Deceiving the emperor, disrespecting the emperor, killing his wife and child, losing his conscience." Seeing that the Lord Assistant Minister's face was getting darker and darker, he finally realized something. His face turned pale. He quickly explained, "Lord Assistant Minister, please don't misunderstand. The emperor's son-in-law who killed his wife and child was the emperor's son-in-law in the play. It's definitely not referring to you." Cui Ming's face turned even uglier. He asked, "Which theater in Luoyang is this play from?" The manager said, "It's called Qin Shimi. Almost all the theaters are singing it. It's said that it even spread to the palace yesterday. A few concubines in the Western Palace specially called a troupe to perform in the palace." As soon as he finished speaking, a palace maid knocked on the door and walked in. She said, "Emperor's son-in-law, the concubines have called a troupe to watch a play in the Western Palace. Her Highness the Princess has also entered the palace. She asked me to invite you." Cui Ming asked, "What play?" The palace maid said, "It's called Qin Shimi. It's been sung outside the palace." Cui Ming's face darkened. He said, "Go back and tell the princess that I have something important to do here. I can't leave. I won't be going. You killed your wife and child, losing your conscience. You forced Han Qi to her death in the temple. You put the indictment in my hall. You're so determined. Which one are you?" Li Mu hummed the opera and came to the Luoyang Yamen. He asked the owner of Miaoying Lane to help promote Qin Shimi. A classic was a classic. Once it was released, it became popular in Luoyang. He had to thank the late emperor. If he didn't like opera and supported the arts industry in Luoyang, there wouldn't be such a popular culture today. The case of the chopping of beauties was just a prelude to what he was about to do. The real highlight was yet to come. The Ministry of Personnel didn't act quickly. It took Zhang Chun half a month to receive the appointment from the Ministry of Personnel. From today onwards, besides being the Luoyang magistrate, He had another identity. He was the deputy of the Imperial Clan Temple. In the Luoyang Yamen, Li Mu looked at Zhang Chun and asked seriously, "Old Zhang, are you sure? This time you'll offend Princess Yunyang, the royal family, the old party, and many people." Zhang Chun's eyes were firm. He said, "Say no more. Chui Ming and I are absolutely irreconcilable." Li Mu nodded and said, "Then let's go." Zhang Chun said, "I have another question." Li Mu asked, "What is it?" Zhang Chun looked at him and asked, "Why haven't I heard of Her Majesty summoning you recently?" Speaking of this, Li Mu was a little embarrassed. Ever since the Empress broke into his dream and saw something she shouldn't have, they hadn't met again. Whether it was in reality or in his dream. The closest they were to each other was when they went to court. There was still a curtain between them. Li Mu said, "Her Majesty and I have some misunderstandings." Misunderstandings? Zhang Chun's face turned pale. He asked nervously, "What misunderstandings?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "It's not convenient for me to tell you." Not convenient? Zhang Chun thought about it and seemed to realize something. As a middle-aged man, he knew very well what could affect the relationship between a man and a woman the most. If one aspect wasn't harmonious, it would be difficult for other aspects to be harmonious. He looked at Li Mu and said reluctantly, "My jar of medicinal wine is under the table in my room. Take it with you when you go back." Chapter 271. Li Mu naturally did not need Zhang Chun's medicinal wine. Other unorthodox cultivators might need to use external items to nourish their bodies, but Buddhist and Taoist cultivators did not need to. Taoist cultivators refined the 7 spirits, especially the sparrow-yin spirit. They had sufficient kidney energy and did not need nourishment. Buddhist cultivators directly cultivated their bodies. Even if their bodies were as strong as an ox, there was no need for nourishment. Of course, there was no difference in nourishment for Buddhist abstinence. This medicinal wine might be the icing on the cake, but Li Mu did not need it at the moment. Drinking a mouthful would cause him to dream for an entire night. Li Mu did not want to experience that feeling again. Forget it. Zhang Chun shook his head and walked out of the office. He said, "I'm going to the Zongjing Temple." The Zongjing Temple mainly dealt with the affairs of the royal family. Like the 3 provinces, the temple was located in the palace. Zhang Chun entered the palace with the token of the Zongjing Temple's deputy and came to the entrance of the temple. The 2 guards at the entrance came up to him and asked, "Sir, what brings you to the Zongjing Temple?" Zhang Chun took out his token and said, "I'm the newly appointed deputy of the Zongjing Temple." The 2 guards had long heard that the Zongjing Temple had expanded with an additional deputy and deputy. After seeing the token, they immediately said respectfully, "Greetings, deputy. Please come in." One of them brought Zhang Chun to a remote office and said, "Sir, the deputy has already made arrangements. This will be your office in the future." Zhang Chun asked, "Where are the deputy and deputy?" The guard said, "When there is nothing important, the 2 of them will not come here. Deputy Lu just came and left. Deputy Feng is taking an afternoon nap. When he wakes up, I will report to him." Zhang Chun moved a chair and sat down. He said, "This is my first time at the Zongjing Temple. Tell me what I have to do on a daily basis." The Jianghu said, "The most important thing for the Zongjing Temple is to manage the affairs of the royal family. If a member of the royal family gives birth to a child, it must be reported to the Zongjing Temple in a timely manner so that the royal bloodline can be recorded in the pedigree. When a member of the royal family is conferred a title, it must also be recorded by the Zongjing Temple. When a member of the royal family is to be conferred a title, it must also be recorded by the Zongjing Temple." Zhang Chun asked, "Do the imperial clan's relatives, and officials above the 4th rank also have to be tried by the imperial clan temple?" Zhang Gu stared blankly for a moment before nodding his head and saying, "According to the law, if a member of the imperial family or a high-ranking official violates the law, only the imperial clan temple can judge him. Although this was the law, if a member of the royal family or a high official of the country who needed to be judged by the imperial clan temple committed a crime, they could settle it with their own power. How could they be judged by the imperial clan temple, unless they committed a rebellion?" Zhang Chun continued to ask, "What's the process of the imperial clan temple's trial?" Zhang Gu said, "First, we have to summon the member of the imperial family or the official who violated the law." Zhang Chun said indifferently, "Go to the secretariat and summon the left assistant minister of the secretariat, Chui Ming." Zhang Gu stared blankly for a moment, suspecting that he had heard wrongly. Wasn't the left assistant minister of the secretariat the emperor's son-in-law? Did he eat a bear's heart and leopard's guts to summon the emperor's son-in-law? Didn't you hear? Zhang Chun repeated, go to the secretariat and summon the left assistant minister of the secretariat, Cui Ming. He is involved in a major case. Jianghu stared blankly for a moment, then clutched his stomach and said, Lord, this lowly official suddenly has an unbearable abdominal pain. I need to go to the toilet, please forgive me. After saying that, he ignored Zhang Chun and ran out like a wisp of smoke. In another yamen, Jianghu hurriedly ran in and shook the person sleeping on the table awake. He hurriedly said, Lord Feng, it's not good, it's not good. Deputy Minister Feng, who was disturbed from his good sleep, raised his head. A trace of anger appeared on his face as he asked, What's the matter, why are you so flustered? The Jianghu said, The new deputy temple head is here. Deputy Minister Feng frowned and said, If he's here, so be it. What? Do I have to personally welcome him? Jianghu said in a panic, No, he just arrived at the Imperial Clan Temple and wants to summon Assistant Minister Cui for questioning. What should this lowly official do? Hearing the two words, Assistant Minister Cui, Deputy Minister Feng immediately sobered up and asked, Assistant Minister Cui, which Assistant Minister Cui? Jianghu said, Assistant Minister of the Secretariat, Cui Ming, Princess Yunyang's son-in-law. Deputy Minister Feng stood up and said in shock, Is he crazy? It's his first day at the Imperial Clan Temple. He hasn't even settled down in his position, yet he dares to find trouble with Prince Consort Cui? After Jianghu left, Zhang Chun waited in the yamen. He didn't see Jianghu, but a man wearing the same official uniform as him came. The man walked in and introduced himself, I'm Feng Jie, Deputy Minister of the Imperial Clan Temple. Zhang Chun cupped his hands and said, So it's Lord Feng. Sorry for the disrespect, Deputy Minister Feng asked. I heard that Lord Zhang wants to summon Assistant Minister Cui. May I know what crime Assistant Minister Cui has committed? Zhang Chun said, The Imperial Clan Temple has summoned him. I'll confront him face to face and I'll know. Deputy Minister Feng said, Lord Cui is the prince consort of the current dynasty. His status is honorable, and he's also the assistant minister of the secretariat. He has to deal with a myriad of state affairs every day. Who knows how many state affairs are waiting for him to deal with? How can we summon him just because we want to? If we delay the state's affairs, which one of us can bear the responsibility? Zhang Chun snorted and said, So what if he's the prince consort of the current dynasty? So what if he's the assistant minister of the secretariat? A life for a life, a debt must be paid. I don't care if he has to deal with a myriad of state affairs every day. If he violates the law, he should be judged. Deputy Minister Feng said, Tell me first, what crime did Assistant Minister Cui commit? Zhang Chun said coldly, He killed his fiancée and framed her entire family. Shouldn't I summon him? A bunch of nonsense. Deputy Minister Feng said, Everyone knows that Lord Cui's wife is Princess Yunyang. How can you frame him here? Zhang Chun said indifferently, Whether I'm framing him or not, you'll know when you summon Cui Ming. Deputy Minister Feng's expression was uncertain. Zhang Chun seemed to be very certain about this matter. This made him, who originally didn't believe it, start to waver. He also knew a little about Assistant Minister Cui's past. He was originally the son-in-law of the Zhejiang prefectural governor. Later, the Zhejiang prefectural governor colluded with the demon sect and his entire family was massacred. Cui Ming made a meritorious report and was placed in an important position by the previous emperor. In more than 10 years he went from being a small official to marrying a princess and becoming an important official in the court. No one remembered his past. Cui Ming was a pillar of the old party. Deputy Minister Feng didn't dare to slight him. He looked at Zhang Chun and said, This case is of great importance. I'll first report it to the deputy minister and ask him to make a decision. Finished speaking, he walked out of the Imperial Clan Temple. However, he didn't leave the palace. Instead, he went around to the back gate of the Hall of Secretaries. He summoned the gatekeeper and said, I'm the deputy minister of the Imperial Clan Temple, Feng Jie. Go and report to Assistant Minister Cui that I have an important matter to discuss with him. The gatekeeper said, Sir, please wait a moment. I'll go and report to Lord Cui. Before long Cui Ming walked out. Deputy Minister Feng hurriedly went up to him and said, Greetings, Prince Consort. Cui Ming glanced at him indifferently and asked, What business do you have with me? Deputy Minister Feng asked, Does Prince Consort know that a new deputy minister has come to the Imperial Clan Temple? Cui Ming glanced at him and asked, Is this related to the important matter you're looking for me for? It's related, it's greatly related. Deputy Minister Feng said, on the first day he came to the Imperial Clan Temple, he wanted to summon Prince Consort. He said that you're involved in a major case and summoned you to the Imperial Clan Temple. I've already temporarily put this matter on hold. I don't dare to make a decision on my own, so I immediately came to find Prince Consort. I'm involved in a case? Chui Ming frowned and asked, what case? Deputy Minister Feng lowered his head and said, I don't dare to say. Chui Ming said coldly, speak. Deputy Minister Feng trembled and said, he said that you killed your fiancée and even framed her entire clan, causing the deaths of dozens of people. Ridiculous. Chui Ming looked at him coldly and said, what kind of status do you have? You believe such ridiculous words? Deputy Minister Feng heard this and finally relaxed. He hurriedly said, of course I don't believe it. Prince Consort is someone who places righteousness above family. How could you do something worse than a beast? He revealed a smile and said, I'll be going back first. Seeing Deputy Minister Feng leave, Chui Ming's face gradually darkened. It had been 20 years since the incident. Everyone in the Chu clan had been sentenced to death for colluding with the heretical cultivation. He had personally seen his entire family, including the servants, decapitated and their souls scattered. Other than him, no one else knew about this matter. How did the new Imperial Clan Temple minister find out? Moreover, the words Imperial Clan Temple sounded familiar to him. The more he thought about it, the more familiar it seemed. However, he had never been to the Imperial Clan Temple and had never had any interactions with the officials of the Imperial Clan Temple. He returned to the Secretariat with deep thoughts. Coincidentally, a few people walked out of a yamen. Take care, Lord Li. Lord Li, you've worked hard. It's finally over. These days it's all thanks to Lord Li. Several officials from the Secretariat escorted Li Mu out. With Li Mu's help, after half a month of discussion, the complete Imperial examination system was finally settled. When Li Mu walked out of the Secretariat, he turned his head and looked at Chui Ming standing in the courtyard. He smiled faintly. This smile seemed to strike Chui Ming's mind like a bolt of lightning. The Imperial Clan Temple. He finally remembered where his sense of familiarity with the Imperial Clan Temple came from. It came from Li Mu. In the past half a month, Li Mu had used the Imperial examination discussion to first break the situation where the old faction of the Xiao clan completely controlled the Imperial Clan Temple. Then he proposed that the Imperial Clan Temple supervise the Imperial examination and took the opportunity to expand the number of officials in the Imperial Clan Temple. Then he threatened the 6 officials from the Secretariat to give Zhang Chun the position of Deputy Minister of the Imperial Clan Temple. This series of abnormal and strange actions had once puzzled Chui Ming for a long time. Li Mu shouldn't have gone through so much trouble, and it wasn't very likely that it was just to send his subordinate to the Imperial Clan Temple. On the first day that Zhang Chun came to the Imperial Clan Temple, he summoned him. The reason for the summons was about the old matter from 20 years ago. This wasn't a coincidence. Before this, everything that Li Mu did was to pave the way for today's matter. He was Li Mu's ultimate goal. All of this was linked layer by layer. In the past half a month, Li Mu had approached his goal step by step. Chui Ming even suspected that Li Mu didn't hesitate to become enemies with the 4 great academies, reform the Great Zhou's official selection system, and propose the Imperial examination. Was it just to take the opportunity to interfere with the Imperial Clan Temple? For today, this person's scheming was deep, and his plans were meticulous. It was terrifying. Thinking back to Li Mu's meaningful smile just now, Chui Ming only felt his entire body turn cold. A chill rushed from his tailbone to the top of his head. Li Mu, what a deep scheme. Chapter 272. Chui Ming hurried out of the Secretariat. He walked straight out of the palace and headed to the South Court. The South Court and the North Court were located on both sides of the palace. The North Court was mostly occupied by officials, while the South Court was occupied by nobles. The royal family, dukes, marquises and viscounts all lived in the South Court. The Prince Consort's residence and the Princess residence were also in the South Court. Chui Ming did not go home, nor did he go to the Princess residence. Instead he went to another high gate. This was an extremely luxurious residence. 2 stone lions were lying in front of the gate. They were huge and lifelike. When Chui Ming approached, the 2 stone lions turned their heads at the same time. Their eyes shone brightly. Chui Ming snorted. The 2 stone lions trembled and turned their heads away, not daring to meet his gaze. At this moment, the gate of the residence opened. A man who looked like a servant walked out. Before he arrived, his voice was heard. "Who dares to be so presumptuous in front of Prince Shou's residence?" Cui Ming looked at him coldly. When the man saw him, his expression changed instantly. "Prince Consort, is there anything I can help you with?" Not many people in Fairy's capital did not know the Prince Consort of Princess Yunyang. Not only did he have a high cultivation, but he also held a high position as the assistant minister of the secretariat. He was one of the pillars of the old party. Although he was the butler of Prince Shou's residence, he did not dare to slight him. Cui Ming asked, "Is His Highness in the residence?" The servant said, "His Highness is here. Prince Consort, please. I'll bring you to him." With Cui Ming's status, he naturally could not let him wait here. He had already sent a message to the servants in the residence. Then he brought Cui Ming into the residence. In the back garden of Prince Shou's residence, a fat man dressed in luxurious clothes was sitting on a chair, shaking his head. He was not light, and his status in the imperial court was also very high. This man was Prince Shou, a member of the great Zhou's royal family. He was the half-brother of the late emperor and also the minister of Imperial Ancestral Temple. In the garden there was a stage set up. The performers of the prince's mansion were singing, "Deceiving the emperor, defying the emperor, breaking off marriage, a man is sent to bed, killing his wife and son, losing his conscience, forcing Han Qi to die in the court." It was the most popular play in Luoyang recently, Qin Shimi. While Prince Shou was listening to the performer's performance, the maid who was pouring tea couldn't help but be engrossed in the performance. She accidentally spilled the tea on the table. A housekeeper saw this and said angrily, "How can you pour the tea like that?" The maid came back to her senses and bowed her head. When she saw the tea stains on the table, her little face turned white. She immediately kneeled on the ground and said in a panic, "Wangya, I'm sorry." King Shou waved his hand and said, "Stand to the side if you want to listen, don't disturb me." The maid heaved a sigh of relief. After wiping the tea stains off the table with her sleeve, she quickly retreated to the side. When another housekeeper came in with Cui Ming, Prince Shou rubbed his round belly and said, "Why is Lord Cui free to come to my mansion today? Men, bring a chair for Lord Cui, let's watch the show together. I have something important to discuss with Wangya." Cui Ming walked to the stage and looked at the performers and said, "You all can leave now." The performers paused and looked at Prince Shou. I'm just in the mood. That ungrateful Qin Shimi who abandoned his wife and son is about to be struck to death." Prince Shou's face showed that he wanted to continue, but he still waved his hand helplessly and said, "You all can leave now." The performers in the garden hurriedly left. Cui Ming looked at the guards behind Prince Shou and said, "You all can leave as well." The guards were hesitant. Prince Shou waved his hand again and said, "You all can leave now. Lord Cui is one of us." The leader of the guards said, "I'm worried that there might be other changes." Prince Shou said, "What changes can there be? With Lord Cui's cultivation he can protect me. You all can leave now." Only then did the guards leave. After they left, Cui Ming formed a seal with his hands and threw out a few spiritual jades to set up a soundproof array formation. Prince Shou was surprised. What is it that made Lord Cui so cautious? After setting up the soundproof array formation, Cui Ming looked at Prince Shou and said, "I'm in a bit of trouble and I need your help." Prince Shou looked around and said, "Since Lord Cui is so cautious, I'm afraid the trouble you're in isn't small, right?" Cui Ming said, "Whether the trouble is big or small, it depends on the attitude of the Imperial Clan Temple. Do you know that there's a new deputy in the Imperial Clan Temple?" Prince Shou was surprised. There's such a thing? Cui Ming knew that with Prince Shou's status, it was impossible for him to go to the Imperial Clan Temple often. He explained, "The Imperial Court has restructured the Imperial Clan Temple. Since then there are 2 vice ministers and 2 deputy ministers in the Imperial Clan Temple. The new deputy minister has brought me some trouble?" Prince Shou asked. "What trouble can a mere deputy minister bring to Lord Cui?" Cui Ming said, 20 years ago when I was the county magistrate of Xianxia County, I once punished a family that colluded with the heretical cultivation. In the end, the deputy minister of the Imperial Clan Temple came back and accused me of killing my wife and exterminating the family." Wait. Prince Shou was puzzled. "You punished a family that colluded with the heretical cultivation? Why did you accuse them of killing their wife and exterminating the family?" Cui Ming's expression froze, then he said, "In that family there was a woman who was once my fiancée. However, they colluded with the heretical cultivation, which was not allowed by the law of the country. Thus, I decided to kill them for the sake of justice. However, I didn't expect to be framed. Why does this story sound so familiar? Prince Shou scratched his head as if he remembered something, then he said, I remember now. When the Zhejiang prefectural governor colluded with the demon sect, it was also Lord Chui who decided to kill his wife for the sake of justice. That's strange. Why does Lord Chui's father-in-law's family always do such things? If I didn't know that Lord Chui is a just and impartial person who doesn't even show mercy to his wife, I would have thought that the story of Qin Shimi was based on you. Chui Ming's expression was unnatural. How is that possible? Prince Shou smiled. I'm just saying. However, Qin Shimi's story is quite interesting. Lord Chui, you can watch it with me later. There's no need for that. I still have matters to attend to in the yamen. Chui Ming looked at Prince Shou and said, this matter is related to my reputation. I'll leave it to you, Your Highness. Prince Shou nodded and said, it's my duty. Lord Chui is one of us. I can't let anything happen to you. I'll go to the ancestral temple now. Chui Ming cupped his hands and said, thank you, Your Highness. Half an hour later, at the entrance of the ancestral temple, a new steward at the entrance saw a fat man walking towards them from afar and asked, who is this fat man? How dare he walk around the palace so casually? Are you blind? That's the head of the temple. Another steward kicked his butt and ran over. He said flatteringly, head of the temple, what brings you here today? Prince Shou looked at him and asked, I heard that there's a new head of the temple. What's his name and where is he now? The steward said, he's in the yamen. Prince Shou entered the ancestral temple and was led into a yamen by the steward. He looked at the person sitting in the yamen and asked, you're Zhang Chun? Zhang Chun raised his head and asked, who are you? The steward quickly explained, Lord Zhang, this is the head of the temple. He's also Prince Shou. Why aren't you greeting him? Zhang Chun stood up and cupped his hands, greetings, head of the temple. Prince Shou went straight to the point, you're the one who wants to sue Assistant Minister Chui. What is it? Do you have evidence? Zhang Chun said, it's been more than 20 years. It's hard to get evidence. However, there's justice in this world. Chui Ming might be able to hide what he did from the world, but not from the heavens. Prince Shou frowned. Did Assistant Minister Chui really commit the crime of killing his wife and exterminating his family? Not just once. Zhang Chun said, he was originally from Yangqiu County in the North region. Not long after he was engaged to a woman from Yangqiu County, he got to know a woman from the local wealthy family. Before the marriage, the daughter of Zhejiang County's prefectural governor came to the North region and he got to know the daughter of Zhejiang County's prefectural governor. For his own future, he killed the woman from the wealthy family and framed her. A few years later, Zhejiang County's prefectural governor colluded with the demon sect and it was Chui Ming who exposed it. Zhejiang County's prefectural governor was executed. I now suspect that Zhejiang County's prefectural governor was also framed by him. What Chui Ming is best at is killing his wife and framing others so that he could have a meteoric rise in his career. He's worse than a beast. He's worse than a beast. Prince Shou's face turned red and he couldn't help but curse. Isn't a beast like him worse than Qin Shimi? He should be hacked into 1,000 pieces and die 1,000 times. After cursing, he was panting heavily and only then did he realize that the chief and Zhang Chun were looking at him in shock. King Shou was stunned for a brief moment before he realized his position. Coughing lightly he replied, that's just your guess. I'm the son-in-law of the Lin family, a fourth-grade official. How can I allow myself to be framed by you? Zhang Chun said, it's easy to determine if it's a framing. As long as a level 7 expert interrogates him, the truth will be revealed. Prince Shou glanced at him and asked, do you think level 7 experts are as common as cabbages? There are only a few level 7 experts in Fairy's capital. Do you want to disturb the deans or trouble His Majesty to interrogate the prince consort and a rank 4 official for no reason? Where's the dignity of the imperial court? Where's the dignity of the imperial court? Zhang Chun said, are you protecting Chui Ming? Prince Shou said angrily, how dare you doubt my fairness? You have no proof. If you want to accuse Assistant Minister Chui, then show me proof. Falsely accusing an official of the imperial court is a serious crime. Zhang Chun asked, what if I have proof? Prince Shou's gaze turned and he scoffed, I'll tell you the truth. No matter what crime Master Chui committed, the imperial clan temple will protect him. You can give up. Zhang Chun gritted his teeth and said, officials protect each other. Darkness. Your imperial clan temple is F** King Dark. Prince Shou looked at him in disdain and said, The Imperial Clan Temple belongs to Xiao, not Zhang. As long as you're here, you have to listen to me. Unless you have the guts to go to the Imperial Court and report to His Majesty and let the entire fairies' capital know about this. Chapter 273. Prince Shou looked down on Zhang Chun for a while before he left. Walking out of the Imperial Clan Temple, he coughed a few times and spat out a mouthful of thick phlegm. Bah, scum. Beast. Inhumane. Worse than dogs and pigs. Prince Shou left the Imperial Clan Temple while cursing. Jianghu scratched his head in confusion, not understanding why the prince said that. Although this new deputy was unable to see the situation clearly and did not know what was good for him, he could not be called a scum. Not to mention a beast, inhumane and worse than dogs and pigs. If what Deputy Zhang said was true, then Assistant Minister Cui, the current emperor's son-in-law, was the one who was worthy of these words. Thinking about what Zhang Chun said just now, Jianghu could not help but feel a chill in his heart. Killing his wife and exterminating his family time and time again just for his own future. If such a person was described as a beast, even a beast, pig or dog would feel offended. In the Imperial Clan Temple, Deputy Feng walked into Zhang Chun's office and asked faintly, "Did Lord Zhang understand what the Deputy Minister said just now?" Just now he was outside and heard Prince Shou's furious words. Assistant Minister Cui was going to be protected in the Imperial Clan Temple. No one could do anything. As the Deputy Minister of the Imperial Clan Temple, Prince Shou had absolute authority in the Imperial Clan Temple. Zhang Chun did not pay any attention to him. He stood there in a daze for a long time before he gradually came back to his senses. He walked to the door and asked a minor official, "Is Prince Shou's surname Xiao?" The minor official looked at him strangely and said, "Of course, Prince Shou is the late emperor's younger brother and a member of the imperial family. How could his surname not be Xiao?" Zhang Chun touched his chin and smiled, "Wonderful." Not long after, in the secretariat, Cui Ming also learned about the scene that happened in the Imperial Clan Temple from Deputy Feng. King Shou didn't let him down. He immediately intimidated Zhang Chun, which allowed him to heave a sigh of relief. However, it was only temporary. Li Mu had spent a lot of effort to reform the imperial examination and send Zhang Chun to the Zongjing Temple. His target was obviously him. The drama Qin Shimi was most likely created by him. He had spent so much effort to get to this point, so he wouldn't give up so easily. Although he didn't know what Li Mu would do next, he had to take precautions. At this moment, Cui Ming was still puzzled about something. He knew that he had been very secretive about what had happened 20 years ago, and no one had suspected him during the past 20 years. So, how did Li Mu and Zhang Chun find out about it? Could it be that there was a fish that escaped the net in the Chu clan? Both of them were from Yangqiu County. Yangqiu County was the starting point of his life. There were many things he had done there that he couldn't let others know about. With the secret in the deepest part of his heart exposed, Cui Ming's mind was no longer in the secretariat. He left the palace again and returned to the prince consort's residence. He had two permanent residences in the palace. One was Princess Yunyang's residence, and the other was the prince consort's residence that the previous emperor had bestowed upon him. After entering the prince consort's residence, Cui Ming directly walked into the deepest courtyard. The entire prince consort's residence was covered by a large formation. This formation was extremely powerful and could withstand the attacks of Dongshuan's cultivators for a moment. The innermost courtyard was where Cui Ming usually cultivated. No one in the residence was allowed to enter. The courtyard was also covered by a formation. The divine capital was the safest place in the Great Zhou. Under the protection of two layers of formations, even a fly couldn't fly into the prince consort's residence. Cui Ming stepped into the courtyard. Standing in the middle of the courtyard, he said, "I need you to make a trip to Yangqiu County in the North County. Check if there are any fish that escaped the net in the Chu clan back then. If there aren't any, search for all the ghosts in Yangqiu County. Back then, I hadn't set foot on the path of cultivation, so I'm not sure if Chu Yuner has become a Yin spirit." As soon as Cui Ming finished speaking, a human face suddenly appeared on an old tree in the courtyard. The face was old, and the patterns on the tree bark were like wrinkles on the face. The surface of the old tree rose and fell. An old man in brown walked out of the trunk. After nodding slightly at Cui Ming, he walked out of the prince consort's residence without a word. Cui Ming looked up at the sky and clenched his fists. He said in a low voice, "Li Mu, what grudge do I have with you? How can you go against me like this? The divine capital Yamen. Li Mu learned about what had just happened in the Zongjing Temple from Zhang Chun. Sure enough, even if they broke into the Zongjing Temple, it was still impossible to deal with Cui Ming. Even if it was a simple summons, they would encounter heavy resistance. Cui Ming's status in the old party was extremely high. He was the prince consort and the assistant minister of the secretariat. He controlled the state's affairs. Other than Zhang Chun and the new vice minister Liu Biao, the rest of the people in the Zongjing Temple were from the old party. Especially the minister of the Zongjing Temple, who was the king of the Great Zhou. He had absolute control over the Zongjing Temple. At present they still had to make a big deal out of this. The script of Qin Shimi was given to the owner of the Miaoying Lane by Li Mu. She asked her performers to turn it into an opera as quickly as possible. Under her deliberate promotion, she sold the script to other opera houses at a low price. Only then could such a phenomenal play be produced. Once Cui Ming's matter was exposed, with the popularity of Qin Shimi, it would probably set off a frenzy of public opinion in the divine capital. The imperial court could care less about anything except public opinion. This was closely related to the faith of the people. It was related to the continuation of the Great Zhou. The next day, the tri-daily morning court session was held as scheduled. In the last few court sessions, the officials were discussing the imperial examination. They were contributing to the Secretariat's policy. Just yesterday, the Secretariat had completed the formulation of the imperial examination policy. The next thing to do was for the various departments to implement it as soon as possible. The talents recommended by the 36 prefectures had already left for the divine capital. They had to complete all matters related to the imperial examination within 2 months. The morning court session today ended after more than 4 hours of discussion. Just when everyone thought they could leave, a voice came from the back of the 100 officials. "Your Majesty, I have a memorial." Someone recognized that person. It was the commissioner of the divine capital, Zhang Chun. They didn't know who the previous commissioners of the divine capital were, but the current commissioner of the divine capital had caused a ruckus in the imperial court several times. It was hard not to have a deep impression of him. Some of the officials in the 3 provinces and the Ministry of Personnel knew that just yesterday, the commissioner of the divine capital, Zhang Chun, was also the deputy of the Imperial Ancestral Temple. Ever since the imperial examination was introduced and the Imperial Ancestral Temple supervised the imperial examination, the deputy of the Imperial Ancestral Temple had become the most popular position in the imperial court. Cui Ming's position was only behind the commissioner of ministers, the secretariat's head of department, and the ministers of the 6 departments. When he saw Zhang Chun stand out, he suddenly had a bad premonition. Zhang Chun hugged his ceremonial tablet and bowed. "I want to impeach the assistant minister of the secretariat, Cui Ming, and the deputy of the Imperial Ancestral Temple." When Cui Ming heard this, his mind exploded. In the crowd, Deputy Feng was also stunned. He thought that after Prince Shou's discipline, Zhang Chun would be more obedient. He did not expect him to be so ruthless. He bypassed the Imperial Ancestral Temple and brought this matter to the Imperial Court. Moreover, not only did he impeach Assistant Minister Cui, but he also impeached Prince Shou. This was crazy. There were even more people in Crepe Myrtle Hall who were confused. Zhang Chun was taught by Li Mu. In the Imperial Court, he dared to oppose the former emperor's old system and dared to talk back to the academy's instructors. Now, why did he go against Prince Consort Cui and Prince Shou? The empress did not speak. Shangguanli looked at Zhang Chun and asked, "Lord Zhang, why are you impeaching them?" Zhang Chun said, "I impeached Cui Ming because Cui Ming was involved in a murder case that involved dozens of lives. I impeached the deputy of the Imperial Ancestral Temple because the deputy of the Imperial Ancestral Temple not only stopped me from summoning Cui Ming for interrogation, but also said that no matter what crime Cui Ming committed, the Imperial Ancestral Temple would protect him. May I ask, where is justice and justice for officials to protect each other?" In this short period of time, some officials already knew that Zhang Chun had just been promoted to the position of deputy of the Imperial Ancestral Temple. When the officials of the Imperial Court first took office, which one of them was not careful? When they spoke to their colleagues and superiors, they had to put on a smiling face. This Zhang Chun, on his first day in office, impeached his superior's superior in the Imperial Court. He did not even recognize his own family. At the front, Cui Ming's expression was calm. However, the fists in his sleeves were clenched tightly. Shangguanli turned to look at the curtain and asked, "What murder case was Assistant Minister Cui involved in?" Zhang Chun said in a low voice, "More than 20 years ago, when Cui Ming was in Yangqiu County, he was engaged to a woman. Not long after, he cruelly killed the woman in order to attach himself to a prominent family in Xianxia County. After that, he was recommended by the prominent family to enter the academy. However, he later became acquainted with the daughter of the Jianghu County chief. As Zhang Chun spoke, there was an uproar in the imperial court. What kind of status did Cui Ming have? He was the son-in-law of Princess Yunyang and the assistant minister of the secretariat. How could he do such a cruel thing? He was worse than Qin Shimi in the opera. Twice in a row, for the sake of his own future, he killed his fiancée and even killed dozens of people in his wife's family. How could this be done by one person? Some of the old officials in the imperial court had heard of Cui Ming's past. The matter of the Jianghu County chief colluding with the demon sect back then had caused an uproar in the imperial court. Even now, there were still people who remembered that Cui Ming had placed righteousness before family and was placed in an important position by the late emperor. Wait, this matter sounded a little familiar. Exposing his wife's family in exchange for his promotion. Wasn't this the same thing that Zhang Chun said happened to the prominent family in Xianxia County? One fiancé, one wife, two wives' families, hundreds of people, were all killed because they colluded with the heretical cultivation of the demon sect. Assistant Minister Cui could be said to have met the wrong person. However, he himself was not affected. Instead, his official position was getting higher and his status was getting more and more prominent. Now, he was the assistant minister of the secretariat and the son-in-law of a country. It was too much of a coincidence to say that this was a coincidence. The imperial court was in chaos. A breath swept across the imperial court through the curtain, and the imperial court instantly quieted down. Shangguanli looked at Cui Ming and asked, "Assistant Minister Cui, what do you have to say?" Cui Ming raised his head and said righteously, "The Chu family colluded with the heretical cultivation and deserved to die. Even if this official was given another chance, this official would still choose to get rid of the traitors for the country." Assistant Minister Zhang only heard a few words of slander from a despicable person and slandered this official in the imperial court. What are your intentions? Chapter 274. None of the officials in the court believed that Zhang Chun had any ulterior motives for impeaching Cui Ming. Although Zhang Chun and Li Mu both disowned each other and disliked each other, they had one thing in common, and that was that they had no selfish motives. The old party and the new party fought each other because the competition in the imperial court was related to their actual interests. No matter how fierce Li Mu and Zhang Chun were, there was no real benefit for them. He couldn't possibly frame Assistant Minister Cui just because he was jealous that he was more handsome than him. Zhang Chun snorted coldly, "Whether I'm framing you or not, we'll know once we check Cui Ming's soul." At the front of the court, someone stepped forward and said coldly, "Impudent! Lord Cui is the emperor's son-in-law, a fourth-rank official. How can he be humiliated just because of your one-sided words?" The art of soul manipulation was a common method used by the government to investigate cases. For a suspect in a case, as long as they used the art of soul manipulation on him, they could easily break through his psychological defenses and make him spill all the secrets in his heart. Of course, the prerequisite was that the target was a mortal who had yet to condense his soul. After a cultivator condensed his soul force would be strong and it would be difficult to manipulate his soul. After 3 souls fused and condensed into a nascent spirit, it would be even more difficult to manipulate the soul. The person who manipulated the soul had to be several realms higher in cultivation than the person being manipulated. Under the art of soul manipulation there were no secrets. However, all cultivators had secrets and opportunities. Some secrets couldn't be easily exposed in front of others. For cultivators, soul manipulation was a great taboo. There was nothing more humiliating than soul manipulation and soul searching. As a fourth-rank official and the emperor's son-in-law, as long as he didn't commit a major crime like rebellion, the court, even the emperor, couldn't perform soul manipulation and soul searching on him. Once this precedent was set, all the officials in the court would be in danger. No one knew when their thoughts and past would be exposed naked in front of others because of something. This was a bottom line that couldn't be easily crossed at the national level. Furthermore, it wasn't impossible for experts to tamper with their memories and souls. Relying too much on them would sometimes backfire. After the Minister of Personnel scolded Zhang Chun, Cui Ming stood up and said, "I've always been open and above board. I'm willing to accept the soul search, Your Majesty. Please clear my name." As soon as he said this, some of the officials in the hall revealed strange expressions. Cui Ming's words were either honest and upright and had a clear conscience, or he was fearless and confident in dealing with the emperor's soul searching. Regardless of the situation, even if the emperor really did use soul-searching, he probably wouldn't be able to find anything. And His Majesty would never do that. Because of a baseless and groundless case, the emperor's son-in-law, a rank 4 official, had already crossed the bottom line of the royal court, and it would bring even greater chaos to the royal court. Cui Ming pointed to the sky and said, "I swear on the heavens and earth that if I lie, I will be struck by lightning and die a horrible death." In order to prove his innocence, he didn't hesitate to swear a Dao oath. This changed the opinion of some of the officials in the royal court. Cultivators respected the heavens and earth, and they wouldn't swear a Dao oath easily. A Dao oath wasn't just an oath, it also had a certain mysterious power, and could be considered as a kind of supernatural power. However, a Dao oath did not represent everything. Although many people would shout, "If I violate a Dao oath, I will be punished by the heavens," when making an oath, if every oath could be fulfilled, why would there be a need for the imperial court and the government to make an oath to the heavens when encountering unpredictable situations? Swearing a Dao oath couldn't completely prove Cui Ming's innocence. After a while, the Empress's voice finally came from behind the curtain. "This case will be jointly investigated by the Ministry of Justice and the Imperial Clan Temple. Assistant Minister Cui will have to cooperate with the investigation." Cui Ming said, "Yes, Your Majesty." Shangguanli stepped forward and said, "The court is dismissed." From the beginning to the end, the Empress only mentioned Cui Ming and didn't mention Prince Shou. The officials also tacitly chose to forget about it. Prince Shou was a former member of the royal family, and his identity was sensitive. As long as he didn't commit any serious crimes, it wouldn't be easy to deal with him. Cui Ming's identity was noble, and even if he was involved in a case, his freedom wasn't restricted. When he left the Ziwei Hall, he glanced at Zhang Chun and then went to the secretariat. Zhang Chun walked out of the hall and Minister Feng chased after him. He said angrily, You Zhang Chun, you really have the guts of a leopard. You dare to talk nonsense in the royal court without any evidence? Do you think the prince consort can make a false accusation? If the Ministry of Justice finds out that Lord Cui is innocent, your official position will be gone. Zhang Chun glanced at him indifferently and said, You can say that after his innocence is proven. Minister Feng left angrily and Li Mu walked up from behind. Zhang Chun looked at him and asked, Are you sure you have a witness? Li Mu touched the ring on his finger and said, Don't worry, even if the Ministry of Justice and the Zongjing Temple weren't willing to punish Cui Ming, they had to follow the Empress's orders. The court was set up in the Ministry of Justice. To prevent the Zongjing Temple and the Ministry of Justice from being biased, the Empress added that the trial would be held in public. The meaning of public trial was that all the procedures would be supervised by other officials or the people. The trial process would be transparent, and any favoritism would be avoided. The person who sued Cui Ming was Zhang Chun, so he naturally couldn't be absent. The Zongjing Temple was attended by Prince Shou, and the Ministry of Justice was presided over by Assistant Minister Zhou Zhong. Other than that, there were a few officials from the Censorate and the Dali Temple. Li Mu was one of the officials from the Censorate. The people of Shindu also heard about it, and they all gathered outside the Ministry of Justice. Cui Ming was a relative of the emperor, and also an important official in the royal court. The country's scandal shouldn't be aired in public. Under normal circumstances, the Zongjing Temple's trial would be held in secret. This time, the Ministry of Justice didn't let the people in and closed the door. Since the people couldn't see what was going on inside, the discussions became even more heated. Who are they interrogating? Why are they making such a big fuss? I saw many officials entering earlier and they didn't even let us in. I know. My relative works in the Zongjing Temple. Yesterday, Lord Zhang and the head of the Zongjing Temple quarreled. I heard that Prince Consort Cui committed a huge crime, and Lord Zhang wanted to investigate it, but the head of the Zongjing Temple refused to let him. What crime did Prince Consort Cui commit? I heard that he killed his wife and her family for his future. Tisk, that's so vicious. Isn't he more detestable than Qin Shimi? I don't know if it's true or not, but the people interrogating Prince Consort Cui are the Assistant Minister of Justice and the head of the Zongjing Temple. They are in cahoots, so what can they get out of it? In the court of the Ministry of Justice, Cui Ming's case was presided over by Assistant Minister Zhou Zhong of the Ministry of Justice, and Prince Shou of the Zongjing Temple as his assistant. In terms of status, relatives of the royal family and officials of the 4th rank and above were under the jurisdiction of the Zongjing Temple. However, after Zhang Chun impeached Prince Shou in the imperial court, although the emperor did not punish him, it was still inappropriate for him to be the presiding judge. Although Cui Ming was the defendant, he could sit in the court because of his noble status. Zhang Chun, on the other hand, had to stand at the side. Behind the table, Assistant Minister Zhou Zhong of the Ministry of Justice patted the gavel and looked at Zhang Chun. He asked, "Deputy Zhang, you said that Assistant Minister Cui killed the Chu family in Yangqiu County 20 years ago and framed the Chu family for colluding with the heretical cultivation. Do you have any evidence? If you don't, the crime of wantonly framing a relative of the royal family and an important official in the imperial court is not light." Cui Ming sat on the chair with a calm expression. He looked calm, but his attention was all on Zhang Chun. When Zhang Chun found out about this, he did not panic. What he feared the most was how Zhang Chun found out about the matter between Su He and Chu Yun'er more than 20 years ago. If Zhang Chun accidentally found out about the matter between the Chu family and Su He when he was the county magistrate of Yangqiu County and used this to slander him and ruin his reputation in Fairy's capital, he would make Zhang Chun pay an even more painful price after this matter. He was worried that Zhang Chun really had some information that could be used against him. Zhang Chun raised his head and looked at Zhou Zhong. He smiled and said, "I've been the county magistrate for more than 10 years. Without evidence, how would I dare to slander the current emperor's son-in-law?" Cui Ming's eyelids twitched. He looked at Zhang Chun. Zhou Zhong said, "Since Deputy Zhang has evidence, take it out." Zhang Chun took out a piece of spiritual jade. He held it in his hand and crushed it. A cloud of mist emerged from the spiritual jade and finally turned into the figure of a woman. It was Madame Chu, who had been stripped of her sword spirit identity by Li Mu. The moment Madame Chu appeared, she saw the figure sitting on the chair. For more than 20 years she had been thinking about this figure all the time. She wanted to drink his blood, eat his flesh, and burn his soul with ghost fire day and night. The intense hatred made her lose her mind in an instant. Black qi surged around her body, and her eyes turned blood red. She pounced on Cui Ming and said sternly, "Cui Ming, give me your life." The moment Madame Chu appeared, Cui Ming could no longer maintain his composure. He stood up abruptly. The next moment, Madame Chu's ghostly figure pounced on him. Cui Ming was not shocked. Instead, he was delighted. He immediately struck out with his palm and attacked with all his might. He did not expect Chu Yun'er's spirit to be with Zhang Chun. He also did not expect her to attack him with all her might as soon as she appeared. This gave him a reason to fight back. She was only at the 4th realm. This palm strike was enough to destroy her soul. She was truly dead and could not bear witness. He used all of his cultivation in this palm strike. He did not hold back at all. "How dare you!" At this moment he heard a sudden roar. Zhang Chun stood in front of Madame Chu and took the full brunt of the palm strike. His body flew backward and blood spurted from his mouth. After he landed, he pointed at Cui Ming angrily and said loudly, "This is the spirit of the Chu family woman. You all saw it, right?" Cui Ming wanted to destroy the witness. He has a guilty conscience. Cui Ming's expression darkened. He had raised his hand again, but he put it down again. At this moment, Madame Chu had regained some of her consciousness. However, her aura was still extremely unstable. As she stood in the Ministry of Justice's courtroom, her resentment continued to rise. Zhou Zhong's eyes flashed. He stood up abruptly, and a powerful aura erupted from his body. He suppressed Madame Chu and said sternly, "How dare you, ghost? How dare you try to assassinate the prince consort?" Li Mu knew that things were not going well. Madame Chu's hatred for Cui Ming was too strong. Now that it had erupted, her anger affected her mind. She almost went mad, and this gave Zhou Zhong an excuse to suppress her. Under the pressure of Zhou Zhong's powerful aura, Madame Chu's spirit became even more unstable. She was on the verge of collapse. However, the resentment on her grew stronger, and her aura became more and more terrifying. Her hatred for Cui Ming and his ruthlessness toward the Ministry of Justice's officials all turned into resentment in her heart. At this moment, the resentment in the Ministry of Justice was so strong that people all over the fairy's capital could sense it. Boom. When the resentment reached its peak, countless citizens on the streets of the fairy's capital looked up at the sky. At this moment, the wind and clouds in the fairy's capital swept away. Chapter 275. A strange phenomenon appeared in the sky above Shendu. The clouds rolled back, revealing a giant funnel. The end of the funnel pointed at the Ministry of Justice. Dense spiritual energy gushed out of the funnel and landed on Madame Chu's body. Madame Chu's resentment disappeared, but her aura rose rapidly. From early stage 4th realm to mid-stage 4th realm to peak stage 4th realm, it was like a hot knife through butter. Her body emitted a powerful 5th realm aura. Zhou Zhong's pressure on him completely disappeared at this moment. Prince Shou turned to look at Zhou Zhong, then looked away. Zhang Chun got up from the ground and looked at Zhou Zhong discreetly. He coughed heavily and spat out another mouthful of blood. After reaching 5th realm, Madame Chu calmed down. She stood quietly in the court and bowed to everyone in the court. I've been wronged for 20 years. When I see this evil man again, I can't control my emotions. Please don't blame me. I'm fine now. You can continue with the trial? The people at the side looked at each other, speechless. Was there a need to continue with the trial? Humans could be bullied but not the heavens. This woman's resentment was so strong that it could even trigger the heavens and earth to fill her body with dense spiritual energy, allowing her to reach 5th realm. If Cui Ming didn't do anything cruel to her, why would she hate Cui Ming so much? The severity of this matter was beyond the case itself. The capital of Great Zhou, under the emperor's feet, the heavens actually created a 5th realm evil spirit. How ironic was this? Behind the table, Zhou Zhong looked at Prince Shou and asked, "Your Highness, what should we do now?" Prince Shou hid his hands in his sleeves and shook his head. "You're the presiding judge. Don't ask me. I don't know these things." Zhou Zhong looked at Madame Chu and said, "What grievances do you have? You can tell us in detail." Madame Chu raised her head and said slowly, "More than 20 years ago, when Cui Ming was still in Yangqiu County." Madame Chu spoke slowly. In the court of the Ministry of Justice, the officials at the side like Li Mu were shocked. After experiencing the vision of heaven and earth, they no longer doubted the woman's words. According to her, Princess Yunyang's son-in-law, Cui Ming, the assistant minister of the Secretariat, was a complete beast. For the sake of his future, not only did he kill his fiancée, he even framed his fiancée's entire clan for colluding with the heretical Cultivation and killed her to silence her. Such actions were extremely beastly, and he was simply even more despicable than Qin Shimi. The heavens must be blind to allow him to advance smoothly and sit at such a high position. After their impression of Cui Ming changed, some people even began to suspect that the collusion of the Zhejiang prefectural governor with the demon sect was also a trick he had used in order to step on the corpses of the Zhejiang prefectural governor's family and advance in the officialdom. After Madame Chu finished speaking, the court of the Ministry of Justice fell into a long silence. Zhou Zhong finally looked at Cui Ming and asked, "Assistant Minister Cui, do you have anything else to say?" Cui Ming did not say a word. At this point, no matter what he said, it would be useless. Zhou Zhong said calmly, "First detain Cui Ming and wait for Her Majesty to deal with him." At this moment, Cui Ming was calm and allowed the bailiffs of the Ministry of Justice to put on the shackles that restricted his mana. After he was taken away, a figure descended from the sky. Mr. Mei walked in and said, "Her Majesty has decreed that Cui Ming is to be taken to the prison of the Imperial Clan Temple." Very few things that happened in the Luoyang could be hidden from the Empress of the 7th Realm. The Empress had probably already predicted this when the vision appeared in the sky. Madame Chu knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Li Mu and Zhang Chun. She said, "Thank you, sir." "Thank you." Zhang Chun's face was pale. He patted his chest and said, "No need to thank me. This is what I should do." Then he looked at Li Mu and extended his hand. He said, "Do you have any more healing pills? Quickly give me some." That damn Cui Ming. That palm strike contained at least 30% of his power. "I almost died." Li Mu took out a bottle of pills and threw it to him. He said, "Don't be so stubborn next time. Even if you want to protect a witness, you don't have to take that palm strike." Zhang Chun took the pills and said, "The situation was urgent. I didn't have time to think so much. This time I need to rest for a while." Cui Ming was the emperor's son-in-law. Even if he broke the law, he would not be paraded through the streets in front of the people of the Luoyang. The people of the Ministry of Justice secretly sent him to the Imperial Clan Temple in the palace. The doors of the Ministry of Justice opened. The people scrambled to look inside but they saw nothing. Li Mu walked out of the Ministry of Justice. Someone impatiently asked, "Constable Li, what's going on inside? Why did the sky change just now?" Li Mu smiled and said, "That villain has confessed and is in jail." The people were in an uproar. "What? That thing is true? I thought that this kind of thing only happened in dramas. This Cui Ming is even more evil than Qin Shimi. This kind of person should be cut into pieces." Li Mu saw the anger of the people and felt that it was a pity. If only Su He was in the Luoyang right now and could see this scene with her own eyes. She didn't come to the Luoyang to find Li Mu. She was probably still in the array. After this, he would immediately return to the northern region and tell her about Cui Ming's fate. Then he would go to Baiyan Mountain to reunite with Lu Hanyan. Constable Li, good job. Thanks to you, this villain can be punished. You really are the justice of the Luoyang. Please accept our respect. Sensing the strong psyche power from the people, Li Mu was stunned. Usually he would redress the grievances for the people. Perhaps the people were used to it. However, he had been plotting behind the scenes this whole time. The person who contributed in front of the stage spoke out in the Golden Palace and was almost killed by Cui Ming in the court of the Ministry of Justice was someone else. Zhang Chun stood beside Li Mu. He clutched his chest and couldn't help but spit out another mouthful of blood. When he returned home gloomily, Madame Zhang saw his blood-stained official robe and ran up to him in shock. She asked in a panic, "What happened? Where did the blood come from? Didn't you go to the imperial court? How did this happen? It's just a small injury. It's not a big deal." Zhang Chun popped a pill into his mouth and said confidently, "That Cui Ming is indeed a beast. Just now in the court of the Ministry of Justice, seeing that the matter was exposed, he actually wanted to destroy the witness. Fortunately, I stepped forward bravely and saved the witness." Madame Zhang took off his blood-stained robe and scolded, "You're the only one who knows how to show off. If something happened to you, what would Yi and I do?" Zhang Chun snorted and said, "I'm not showing off. This is what I should do as an official and a man. It's useless for a man to be handsome. He must be righteous. If Cui Ming wasn't handsome, he wouldn't have been able to deceive those women. Some women are just short-sighted. They only care about a man's appearance and don't understand the inner workings of a man." Madame Zhang's heart ached. Yes, you're right. Sit down first. Do you feel any discomfort? Where are you hurt? Does it hurt? Ministry of Justice. After Cui Ming was taken away, the Shao royal family and some officials from the old party came to inquire about the situation. The Minister of Personnel frowned and said, "How did this happen?" Zhou Zhong shook his head and said, "I also didn't think that the woman's resentment would be so deep. I originally wanted to force her into becoming a demon and kill her while I was at it, but I didn't think that it would stimulate her resentment and allow her to reach the fifth realm. It's all my fault," the Minister of Personnel said. "You can't blame Lord Zhou. No one expected this to happen. I didn't expect Assistant Minister Cui to have such a terrible past." "He's in big trouble this time," Prince Shou said. "Since he's in the Imperial Clan Temple, I'll think of a way to get him out." "You can't." The Minister of Personnel said hurriedly, "Heaven and earth have shown signs of abnormalities. Your Highness, you can't interfere in this matter. I think Princess Yunyang will think of a way. We can only watch." Prince Shou put his hands back into his sleeves and said, "Then there's no other way. I've done everything I can." After leaving the Ministry of Justice, Li Mu did not go home, nor did he return to the divine capital Yamen. Instead, he brought Madame Chu and Mr. Mei to the palace. The situation in the court of the Ministry of Justice was very dangerous just now. Li Mu breathed a sigh of relief and said, "It was too dangerous just now. If you were completely possessed in the court, the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice could kill you directly." Madame Chu was silent for a moment before she said, "Young master told me that I must be rational in court. However, when Lord Zhang let me out, I suddenly lost control of my emotions. Now that I think about it, someone must have controlled me." Li Mu paused and asked, "Who?" Madame Chu thought for a moment and said, "It was that Assistant Minister." Li Mu was shocked. "The Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice, Zhou Zhong?" Madame Chu nodded. Li Mu murmured, "Why did he control you? Did he want you to lose your rationality and be killed by Cui Ming? Dead people tell no tales?" Madame Chu shook her head and said, "After that, he used his aura to suppress me. With his strength, he could have easily destroyed my soul, but he didn't do so. With Madame Chu's cultivation at the fourth realm, to destroy her soul with aura alone would require extremely strong strength." Li Mu was shocked. "Zhou Zhong is that strong?" Madame Chu said, "I can feel that he's very strong, very strong." Chapter 276. Zhou Zhong was the mainstay of the old party. Although his status was not as high as Cui Ming's, his status in the old party might not be comparable to Cui Ming's. Among the three provinces, the Secretariat was directly involved in the decision-making of national affairs. However, how to interpret national policies and implement them was the responsibility of the 6 ministries of the minister. Among them, the 6 ministries had a lot of freedom to act. There were many cases where they agreed in public but disobeyed in private. The Secretariat was only responsible for making plans. It was beyond their control whether or not the 6 ministries of the minister implemented the policies and how to implement them. Li Mu could not understand why Zhou Zhong would help Mrs. Chu. Even though he had been in Luoyang for a long time, there were many twists and turns in the imperial court. He still could not see through them. Maybe Zhou Zhong and Cui Ming had old grudges and wanted to use Mrs. Chu to get rid of him. Or maybe he was just like Zhang Chun, a middle-aged man who was jealous of his excellent peers. Mr. Mei led Li Mu and Mrs. Chu into Xiangyang Palace. Mrs. Chu was already in the 5th plane and was one of the strongest in the world. However, when facing the back of the figure in the palace, she still lowered her head respectfully. Mr. Mei walked forward and said, "Your Majesty, Li Mu and the woman from the Chu family are here." Mrs. Chu knelt on the ground and said respectfully, "Your Majesty, I am your humble servant." The Empress turned around and said softly, "Rise?" Mrs. Chu was still kneeling on the ground and said, 20 years ago, Cui Ming killed me and 36 people of the Chu family. I beg your Majesty to uphold justice for me." The Empress raised her hand slightly and Mrs. Chu could no longer kneel. She looked at Mrs. Chu and said, "Although the tragedy of the Chu family was caused by Cui Ming, the imperial court was also at fault. I will do things according to the law. Apart from that, you can ask for any compensation you want." Mrs. Chu shook her head and said, "The Chu family did not collude with the heretical cultivation. They were framed by a villain. I want the imperial court to clear the Chu family's name and ask Cui Ming to pay the price for what he did." The Empress nodded and said, "This is what the imperial court should do." She looked at Madame Chu and said, "You've just broken through and your foundation isn't stable yet. Mei Wei, take some soul jade from the treasury and help her stabilize her cultivation." Mr. Mei nodded and said to Mrs. Chu, "Please come with me." The current Madame Chu no longer needed Li Mu's protection. The internal guards would protect her. After they left, Li Mu did not plan to stay any longer. After the embarrassment of having his wet dream interrupted by the Empress last time, he still felt a little unnatural in front of the Empress. He was clearly wearing a few layers of clothes and his body was tightly wrapped, but he always felt like he was naked, without a trace of clothing. Li Mu bowed and cupped his fists. "If there is nothing else, I will take my leave." The Empress asked, "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Cui Ming's case was completely different from Zhang Chun making a fuss in the imperial court by the Empress. Li Mu paused and said honestly, "Cui Ming's case is better handled by the imperial clan temple than by your Majesty. If your Majesty directly intervenes, it will send some wrong signals to the imperial court and affect the balance between the new party and the old party. Moreover, your Majesty will directly face the pressure of the West Palace and the Shao royal family." The Empress said, "You're really considerate of me." Li Mu said seriously, "Taking a salary from you and sharing your burdens is what I should do." The Empress was silent for a moment and sighed softly. She said, "More than 30 people disappeared from this world because of one false statement. Isn't the imperial court giving the local government too much power?" Li Mu had considered this problem before. When dealing with Zhao Yong and Ren Yuan, as long as the Jianghu County magistrate submitted the application and the county government checked the file and found no suspicious points, they could sign the document of execution. In reality, the person in charge of the life and death of the people was the county magistrate. There was a saying among the people, "Break a family's county magistrate, destroy a family's county magistrate." A county magistrate could destroy the families of the ordinary people in his jurisdiction. A county magistrate could destroy a family and confiscate a family's property with just a word. This would greatly increase the efficiency of closing cases, but it could easily lead to a large number of unjust, false, and wrong cases. Human lives were greater than heaven. This system of Great Zhou was indeed too hasty. He looked at the Empress and said, "Human lives are at stake. Why don't we take back the authority of local officials? Sentences above execution need to be submitted to the Ministry of Justice for approval and finally handed to your Majesty for approval and then sent to each county." The Empress thought for a moment and nodded. "Your suggestion is very good. When you leave the palace, go to the Hall of Secretaries to pass on my decree. In the future, the sentences of serious homicide cases in each county of Great Zhou will be approved by the county government and then handed to the Ministry of Justice." Li Mu cupped his hands and said, "Your subject obeys." Unknowingly, the distance between him and the Empress was one step closer. Things like passing on decrees should have been done by Shangguanli. In the eyes of the officials, she was the spokesperson of the Empress. If this continued, the day when he replaced Shangguanli was not far away. Standing in front of the Empress, he felt as if he was naked. Li Mu opened his mouth again and said, "Your subject will go to the Hall of Secretaries to pass on the decree." The Empress nodded and said, "Go." He took 2 steps and the Empress's voice came from behind him. "Do you need me to reward you with a few maids?" Sure enough, the Empress still remembered that matter. Li Mu said awkwardly, "There's no need. Thank you, Your Majesty. Your subject will take his leave." Although the Empress had good intentions, even if she rewarded Li Mu with a few beautiful maids, Li Mu would not dare to accept. Not using them was one thing. If Lu Hanyin returned home and saw a group of beautiful women in his house, he would be jealous on the first day. Up until now, Li Mu had always kept the promise he made to her before he left. After leaving Xiangyang Palace, Li Mu went straight to the Hall of Secretaries. The Hall of Secretaries was a confidential place and outsiders were not allowed to enter. However, the constable at the entrance did not stop him. Some time ago he came to the Hall of Secretaries more frequently than he came home. He could almost be considered half a person of the Hall of Secretaries. Li Mu walked through the entrance of the Hall of Secretaries and asked the constable, "Is Lord Lu here?" The constable swallowed his saliva and said, "Yes, the lords are all here. I will go and call." In the Hall of Secretaries, anyone who mentioned Li Mu's name would tremble. The assistant minister of the Hall of Secretaries, the emperor's son-in-law, was a high official with a prominent status. However, he was sent to the prison of the Zongjing Temple in less than a month. The assistant minister was sent to the Zongjing Temple by him. This was not the most terrifying thing. The most terrifying thing was that he first placed the Zongjing Temple on the same level as the other officials from the imperial examinations. Then he used sufficient reasons to persuade the lords to expand the number of officials in the Zongjing Temple. Then he took the opportunity to send his own subordinates to the Zongjing Temple. Along the way, he fought steadily and surely, advancing step by step in order to pull the assistant minister of the Hall of Secretaries down from his high horse. Before this, he did not express any intention to target Assistant Minister Cui. Even when he met him, he would take the initiative to smile and greet him. What kind of scheming was this? If he wanted to scheme against someone, it was likely that the other party would not know why they died until they were at death's door. Soon, Lu Yi hurriedly ran out from a yamen and asked, "Lord Li, is there a problem?" Li Mu said, "His Majesty asked me to pass on a verbal order. In the future, when serious murder cases occur in the various counties, after being investigated by the county yamen, they will be sent to the Ministry of Justice for approval. In the end, His Majesty will give the final approval. You all should discuss and quickly write out a written rule for the Ministry of Justice to implement." Louis nodded and said, "I understand. This official will discuss this with a few colleagues." Li Mu waved his hand and said, "Then I will be leaving. See you later." Louis also raised his head and said, "See you later, Lord Li." When he returned to the yamen, he let out a long sigh of relief. When he thought about how Li Mu had discussed the imperial examinations with them for the past half a month, he felt a chill run down his spine. It seemed that he was planning for the Hall of Secretaries, but in reality, he was thinking about how to kill the assistant minister of the Hall of Secretaries. Li Mu had always given people the impression that he was very upright. He was not afraid of power and did not fear the heavens and earth. In the imperial court he spoke bluntly, and in the imperial court he was courageous. The 6 officials of the Hall of Secretaries, including Lu Yi, all believed that Li Mu was a straightforward person. He did things in a straightforward manner and did not know how to compromise. If he were to be compared to an animal, the most suitable animal would be a dog. He was the Empress's loyal dog, loyally protecting his master. Anyone who dared to provoke the Empress would have a piece of their flesh bitten off by him. Although a loyal dog was fierce, he was not to be feared. As long as one avoided him, there was no need to worry about being bitten. However, no one would have thought that Li Mu was not a dog but a fox. An extremely cunning fox. On the surface he looked harmless, showing a kind smile to you every day. However, at the critical moment he would reveal his sharp fangs and bite off your neck. A vicious dog was not frightening. What was frightening was a cunning fox. Chapter 277. When he walked out of the secretariat, Li Mu sighed softly. Half a month ago, Lu Yi was so warm to him, calling him Brother Li. Just now, in the secretariat, Lu Yi's attitude towards him had changed dramatically. Warmth became politeness, politeness with alienation, and within the alienation with vigilance. Obviously, after the incident with Cui Ming, the straight man image he had painstakingly built had collapsed. Before today the courtiers at most thought that he was a bootlicker of the Empress. After today they would guard against him as a cunning fox. Although a bootlicker would bite, a dog's brain was not as scheming. Foxes were different. In the eyes of most people, foxes were cunning, sinister, and treacherous. This was actually a stereotype of this race. There were foxes who were stupid. Xiao Bai almost had the words stupid, white, and sweet written on his face. Once everyone's impression of him changed, no matter what he did, they would probably guess whether he had a deeper motive. When he walked out of the secretariat and passed by the palace gate, a sedan chair came from outside the palace. Out of the way, out of the way. The few sedan bearers who were carrying the palanquin berated Li Mu from afar to move aside. Li Mu looked left and right. The palace gate could allow at least 4 palanquins to pass through at the same time. He wondered who was inside the palanquin. When he walked out of the palace gate, he happened to hear a few guards talking. It's Princess Yunyang's sedan chair. The prince consort is in prison. The princess can't sit still anymore. The prince consort's character is so bad. The princess should just kick him away and let him fend for himself. Hearing Princess Yunyang's name, Li Mu looked back. The sedan chair had disappeared at the end of his line of sight. Judging from the direction, it should be going to the West Palace. The West Palace was occupied by the previous emperor's concubines. Although the great Zhou emperor had changed his surname, after the empress ascended the throne, she did not purge the Shao royal family. She also did not make things difficult for the concubines left behind by the previous emperor. They were still allowed to live in the West Palace and were treated according to the etiquette of imperial concubines. When Mr. Mei mentioned Cui Ming and Princess Yunyang, his face was full of disdain. He looked down on the couple and thought that they were probably jackals of the same tribe. Regardless of whether it was Princess Yunyang, the Shao royal family, or the officials of the old party, they would certainly not watch Cui Ming fall from power. Princess Yunyang had entered the palace in such a hurry, she must have gone to the West Palace to plead for leniency. Li Mu left the palace and walked on the streets. The people on the streets were all talking about Cui Ming. Madame Chu had caused a huge commotion in the Hall of Punishments earlier, and those who saw the phenomenon couldn't help but ask about the reason behind it. You can't judge a book by its cover. Who would have thought that Prince Consort Cui, who looks like a dog, is actually a beast? I already knew that he wasn't a good person. Look at his face. His cheekbones are sunken and his eyebrows are high. One look and I can tell that he's a hypocritical and ruthless person. All the ladies in Fairy's capital are captivated by him. There must be something strange about him. The imperial court should just kill a beast like him. Don't let him harm the women of Fairy's capital anymore. He's always loitering on the streets. It's so annoying. None of these good-looking people are good. That's not all of them. Constable Li is also good-looking. Cui Ming isn't even fit to carry his shoes. Constable Li has sword-like eyebrows, starry eyes, and a round nose. One look and you can tell that he's an upright person. It's just that he's fated to be in love. What's so strange about that? If I were a woman, I'd want to marry him too. On the streets of Fairy's capital, butchers, waiters, and peddlers gathered in 2s and 3s. They all expressed their disdain for a beast like Cui Ming. They wanted nothing more than to tear him into pieces and send his soul to the 18th level of hell. In a rouge shop by the street, a few women who were choosing rouge were also discussing this matter. You can't judge a book by its cover. I didn't expect Prince Consort Cui to be this kind of person. To think that I like him so much. I even dreamt of him the day before yesterday. I didn't expect him to be such a beast. 2 young women sighed while choosing rouge. Their last companion snorted and said, no matter what Prince Consort Cui does, I'll still like him. He'll always be the prince consort in my heart. A woman frowned and said, how can you be like this? He killed his wife and dozens of her family for his future. How can you like someone like this? Do you still have any sense of right and wrong? The woman pouted and said, I just like him. So what? Is it against the law to like someone? I just saw the princess's sedan enter the palace. Princess, you must think of a way to save the prince consort. Save your grandma's leg. The owner of the rouge shop took the rouge she was looking at from her hand. He was so angry that the muscles on his face twitched and the veins on his forehead popped. He shouted, get out. You're not welcome here. Get out. The woman was stunned for a moment. When she came back to her senses, she said angrily, you dare to scold me. The shopkeeper grabbed her arm and chased her out of the shop. He said angrily, not only do I dare to scold you, I also dare to hit you. I'll remember your donkey face. From now on you're not allowed to step into my shop. Otherwise, I'll hit you every time I see you. Seeing the shopkeeper raise his hand, the woman ran away. The other two women glanced at her and did not chase after her. Li Mu looked at the woman running away and sighed in his heart. There was no lack of people like this woman. Fortunately, there were only a few people like her. In the hearts of most people, justice still existed. The shopkeeper of this rouge shop was a kind person. Li Mu went into the shop and bought 2 boxes of rouge. It could be considered as taking care of his business. Xiaobai was a natural beauty. Even without makeup, she was still a peerless beauty. However, Li Mu felt that it was better for her to dress up. This way she could reduce her charm and prevent him from having some messy dreams at night. Ever since the Empress had discovered that they slept together in the dream, she had never visited Li Mu's dream again. Li Mu had once asked Li Si this question. Of course, this was under the premise of concealing the Empress's identity. Li Si said that if a woman disregarded her identity and often went to meet a man at night, it was not because of love, but because of loneliness. Between Li Mu and the Empress, there was naturally no such thing as the former. But how could the Empress be lonely? Li Mu initially thought that Li Si was talking nonsense. However, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that what he said made sense. As the ruler of a country, the Empress was above millions of people. Because of her identity, status, and strength, the ruler of a country was often alone. They had no relatives or friends. The world only respected and feared them. In the long run, it was easy for their mentality to be suppressed to the point of perversion. Li Mu felt that the Empress was already a little inclined in this direction. In front of others, she was the noble Empress. She had to put on airs when she spoke. However, in Li Mu's dream, she was not polite at all to him. As someone who aspired to be the Empress's intimate little jacket, it was not enough to just help her solve her problems in the imperial court. He had to help her open her heart. There must be other ways besides letting her vent her feelings on him. Li Mu walked on the street thinking about the Empress. He inadvertently glanced and saw a figure in front of him. It was a middle-aged man. He was not burly, but he was very tall and upright. His appearance was not as good as Cui Ming, but at least he was comparable to Tu Zhangchun's. Li Mu had investigated the Assistant Minister of Justice, Zhou Zhong, through Wang Wu. He did not have a wife or children. He lived in a house with 5 courtyards in the North Court. This house was bestowed by the previous emperor. Other than Zhou Zhong himself, there was only an old servant in the house. There were no other maids or servants. Li Mu did not understand why Zhou Zhong would join the old faction. His life was tight. Although the mansion he lived in was big, there were no maids or servants. Li Mu was sure that if Zhang Chun had that mansion, he would have to hire at least 8 maids, and all of them would have to be beautiful. The dragon slayer turned into an evil dragon because he coveted treasures and the princess. Zhou Zhong was not greedy for money, nor was he lustful. He did not use his power to oppress the common people. What was he after? Zhou Zhong suddenly turned around and asked, "Lord Li, you have followed me for so long. Could it be that you want to show off to me that you have captured Assistant Minister Cui?" Li Mu sneered. "Lord Zhou, don't you know why Cui Ming was captured? Since Zhou Zhong's strength could control Madame Chu and affect her mind, he could also make Madame Chu go crazy in the court of the Ministry of Justice and use Cui Ming to get rid of her. However, he did not do so. Instead, he forced Madame Chu to break through. If Zhou Zhong did not have a grudge against Cui Ming, then there was a mole in the old faction." Zhou Zhong glanced at him and said, "The affairs of the court are not as you imagine. It is too early to talk about victory or defeat." Li Mu asked, "What do you mean?" Zhou Zhong said, "You will know by tomorrow at the latest." After saying this, he turned to leave. After taking 2 steps, he paused and turned back to say, "The Chu family's matter can be considered a wake-up call for the court. If you really want to serve the people wholeheartedly, you should propose to His Majesty to take back the right to kill the people in each county." Li Mu said, "Lord Zhou, you don't have to worry about this. I have just reported this matter to His Majesty. In the future, after the counties review the cases, the case files will be submitted to the Ministry of Justice for review. His Majesty will approve it and distribute it to the counties." Zhou Zhong nodded and said, "That is good." Li Mu thought of something. He looked at Zhou Zhong and asked, "If I remember correctly, Lord Zhou pushed for this law reform more than 10 years ago. Why was it abolished later?" Zhou Zhong said indifferently, "Because His Majesty found it troublesome." Li Mu cursed inwardly. Many of the decrees and laws of His Majesty's time were left to this day. The good great Zhou was ruined by His Majesty. Now that the world was taken over by His Majesty could only blame His Majesty. Thinking of His Majesty, Li Mu could not help but think of the Empress. He sighed and said, "Her Majesty is still the most brilliant." Zhou Zhong nodded in agreement and said, "Although loyal dogs are hard to come by, they must meet a wise ruler." Li Mu rejoiced and said, "Fortunately, I met Her Majesty." Then he realized something. He raised his head and said angrily, "Who are you calling a dog?" Chapter 278. Being a subject and being a loyal dog were two different things. Unfortunately, many people in this world didn't understand the difference between the two. Heaven, earth, ruler, family, and teacher. In people's hearts, these five were people that they had to respect and obey. This concept had been deeply rooted in people's hearts since ancient times. People had to maintain respect for heaven and earth, be loyal to their ruler, love their country, be filial to their parents, and respect their teachers. These were all virtues, but being loyal to the ruler was for the sake of love. Love didn't necessarily mean being loyal to the ruler. When faced with an incapable ruler like the previous emperor, being loyal to the ruler was no different from bringing disaster to the country. For the sake of cultivation and to realize the value of justice in his heart, Li Mu was willing to do things for the Great Zhou court and the people of Great Zhou. However, this didn't mean that he would crawl at the feet of the empress and be a loyal dog. The empress might be high and mighty in the eyes of others, but in Li Mu's heart, she couldn't be majestic. When he thought of how she had ravaged him in his dreams, the majestic image he had painstakingly built for her collapsed in an instant. Li Mu couldn't see through Zhou Zhong, but he knew that over the years, as the assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice, he had shielded many people from the old party. However, he had also made incomparable contributions to perfecting the laws of Great Zhou. If one carefully read commentary on the laws of Zhou, they would discover that Zhou Zhong would amend or add a new section of the law every once in a while. In Wei Bin's case, according to the old laws, there was no doubt that his sentence would have been reduced. However, 2 years ago, Zhou Zhong had defined rape of more than 2 people as a serious case. Wei Peng's law of Great Zhou hadn't been updated in time, and by a freak combination of factors, he had successfully obtained the death penalty for Wei Bin. If one carefully studied commentary on the laws of Zhou, it was easy to discover one thing. In the past decade or so, Zhou Zhong hadn't touched on the interests of the nobles and Shindu. Ever since the failure of the reform, he had never tried to abolish the penal code. Instead, he had used a silent method to promote the reform of the laws at the lower levels. If he hadn't revised the laws 2 years ago, Li Mu would have been able to see Wei Bin and the others in Shindu a few years later. Human nature was complicated. It was hard to label someone like Zhou Zhong as a good or bad person. However, there was no doubt that he was a smart person. He would not have said those words to Li Mu for no reason. Regarding Cui Ming, it was still too early to talk about winning or losing. Li Mu pondered for a long time. He was certain that from the perspective of the law, Cui Ming would not be able to escape death unless the Empress protected him. Therefore, Princess Yunyang would definitely persuade the Empress Dowager or Consort Dowager to persuade the Empress. However, with the Empress's character, she would definitely not agree. After feeling sorry for the Empress for a while, he had already walked to the entrance of the Li residence. Li Mu pushed the door open and said, "Xiaobai, come and see what I bought for you." Li Mu stepped through the door and stopped. Xiaobai was squatting in the garden in front of the courtyard, holding a small shovel. Other than Xiaobai, there was also a woman standing in the garden. Xiaobai planted the flowers she had bought a few days ago and patted the soil with the small shovel. She asked, "Sister Zhou, when will these seeds bloom?" The Empress said softly, "Step aside." Xiaobai took the shovel and walked out of the garden. When she saw Li Mu, she said happily, "Young master, you're back." Li Mu had just parted with the Empress at the palace. He had gone to the secretariat and chatted with Zhou Zhong on the street, which had taken up a lot of time. However, she had arrived home before Li Mu. It seemed that she had been at the Li residence for a while. The Empress glanced at him and said, "The palace will not be peaceful for the next 2 days. I came to your place to hide." Li Mu immediately understood what she meant. For Cui Ming's case, Princess Yunyang would definitely ask the Empress Dowager and Imperial Concubine Dowager for help. These people were the concubines of the former emperor and the elders of the Empress. If they lowered their status and pleaded for Cui Ming, the Empress would definitely be in a dilemma. Under such circumstances, it was not a bad idea to not see and not hear. Li Mu thought for a while and asked, "How long will your Majesty be hiding here? Do you need me to clean up a room for you?" Xiaobai put down the shovel and said with a smile, "I've talked to Sister Zhou. She will sleep with me tonight." Li Mu sighed. When would Xiaobai become more vigilant? During the time when Li Mu returned from the palace, she had already treated the Empress as a sister. Human thoughts were complicated. For demons like her, who had grown up in the mountains and had never interacted with humans before, many of them were very naive. They were so naive that they gave people the impression that they lacked a brain. She and Bai Tingxin were both this type. Of course, the Empress was trustworthy. Li Mu was happy to see Xiaobai build a good relationship with her. Xiaobai still did not know that the sister Zhou she spoke of was the richest woman in the Great Zhou. If she got closer to her, she might have a chance to grow 5 tails and 6 tails. What surprised Li Mu was that Xiaobai was naive and ignorant. She did not have much respect for her status as the Empress. The Empress could actually put down her status and call a little fox sister. She really did not behave like an Empress at all. However, he soon realized that Li Si was probably right. She was powerful and had a high status, but she was also human. Humans would feel lonely. After becoming the Empress, she had no relatives, no friends, and even no enemies. For the sake of the throne, the Xiao royal family had fought with the new party to the bitter end. However, what they were fighting for was the position of the next emperor. As the youngest transcendent expert in the Great Zhou dynasty, the Xiao royal family would not dare to become her enemy. Li Mu sighed. As a person, she did not even have an enemy. No wonder she would feel lonely. Xiaobai was silly because of this. When others knew the Empress's status, they would respect her and stay away from her. Xiaobai was close to anyone who treated her well. This was the nature of the Heavenly Fox clan. As for Xiaobai, because she was so beautiful that even women could not arouse the slightest jealousy, it was easy for her to capture the Empress's heart. Last time, the Empress gave her a few drops of Heavenly Fox blood essence, allowing her to advance to 4 tails. She remembered this kindness in her heart and probably forgot the task Lu Hanyan gave her. She automatically excluded the Empress from the ranks of fox spirits. While these thoughts flashed through Li Mu's mind, the Empress had already walked out of the garden. She stood outside the garden and gently waved her sleeves. Li Mu instantly felt that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the courtyard suddenly became abundant. In the garden, the seeds that Xiaobai had just planted sprouted and broke out of the ground. They grew rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. First, green leaves were born and then buds were formed. In a short moment, the buds that had just formed buds were competing to bloom. In a few breaths of time, the garden in the Li residence was full of flowers. Li Mu marveled at the transcendent powerhouse's Taoist magic. Xiaobai was already dumbfounded. She grabbed the Empress's sleeve and said blankly, "Sister Zhou, I want to learn this." The Empress pinched her face and said, "When you grow another tail, I will teach you." Li Mu didn't tell Xiaobai that if she wanted to reach the Empress's level, she would have to grow another 3 tails and become a 7-tailed fox. Spring was a magical power that could be performed by a powerhouse in the creation realm. However, the cultivation of the 5th realm was only at the level of making the withered tree sprout. The Empress's Taoist magic that could make the withered tree bloom in a short period of time required at least the cultivation of the 7th realm. In the small courtyard, the fragrance of flowers filled the air. Xiaobai ran into the garden, sniffing and looking around. Li Mu remembered that there was no more food at home, and the matter of Cui Ming would probably not be resolved in a day or 2. In other words, the Empress would have to stay here for at least 2 days. He looked at the Empress and asked, "Your Majesty, what kind of food do you like to eat? I will go and buy it." The Empress said lightly, "I said, you don't have to call me that outside the palace." It seemed that she really didn't like being the Empress. After leaving the palace, she didn't even say, "Your Majesty." However, in this way, Li Mu was a little troubled about how to address her. If he called her Miss Zhou, it would seem distant, but if he called her Miss Xiao, it would be a little strange. Like Xiao Bai, it didn't seem appropriate to call her sister Zhou either. Xiao Zhou, Xiao Xiao, or directly calling her by her full name would be even more inappropriate. Li Mu thought for a moment and asked, "What do you like to eat?" Since he didn't know how to address her, he might as well not address her and save himself the trouble. The Empress thought for a moment and said, "Fish, tofu?" There were 3 people, so 4 dishes and 1 soup should be enough. Xiaobai liked to eat chicken and the Empress liked to eat fish. Li Mu made steamed sea bass, Xiaobai's favorite stewed chicken with mushrooms, braised tofu and casually stir-fried some vegetables. The last dish was the soup that Xiaobai spent 2 hours to meticulously brew. Without Mr. Mei and Shangguan Li and with Xiaobai's liveliness, this meal was much more lively than the last time. Gradually, Li Mu also realized something. He could completely treat Zhou Yi of the Li residence and the Empress in the palace separately. The woman sitting opposite him now was not the monarch of a country. She was just an elder sister who had the same name as the empress and whom Xiaobai had just met. At the dinner table in the Li residence, the atmosphere was harmonious. In a hall in the West Palace, Princess Yunyang knelt on the ground and begged, "Mother, please save the prince consort." Opposite her, a woman who looked to be about the same age as her and who also looked very similar to her slowly stood up. She said coldly, "Back then I advised you that Cui Ming's status is not good enough for you, but you refused to listen to me. Now that he has caused trouble, you only know to come and beg me?" Princess Yunyang stepped forward, hugged her leg and said, "Mother, no matter what, he is still my prince consort. I have already lost one prince consort. Do you want me to lose another one?" She was her daughter after all. The woman sighed, helped her up and said, "Okay, I will put down my old face and beg His Majesty." Princess Yunyang stood up, wiped her tears and said happily, "I knew it. Mother is the best." A moment later at the gate of Shangyang Palace. Looking at the woman in the palace dress walking slowly, Shangguanli bowed and said, "Greetings, Imperial Dowager." The woman in the palace dress asked, "Is His Majesty in the palace? I have something to see His Majesty." Shangguanli looked at the woman in the palace dress, shook her head and said, "Imperial Dowager, His Majesty is not in the palace." Chapter 279. West Palace, Yongshou Palace. The imperial concubine returned less than a minute after leaving the palace. Princess Yunyang hurried out and asked, "Mother, what did she say?" The imperial concubine said calmly, "She's not in the palace." Princess Yunyang's expression changed. She said flatly, "That's impossible. She's no longer a member of the Zhou family. If she's not in the palace, where else could she be?" The imperial concubine said calmly, "It's true that she's not in the palace. She probably predicted that you would ask me to beg her. Tomorrow the imperial concubine temple will judge the prince consort according to the law. She doesn't want to see us." Princess Yunyang said anxiously, "Mother, what should we do now?" "You have to help me think of a way." The imperial concubine thought for a while. She looked at her and asked, "Do you really have to save him?" Princess Yunyang nodded and said, "No matter what, I have to save him." The imperial concubine thought for a long time and finally sighed. She walked into her bedroom and took out a wooden box from under her pillow. She opened the wooden box and handed a golden token to Princess Yunyang. She said, "This token was given by the late emperor. I only have one. Take it to the imperial concubine temple tomorrow and give it to Prince Shou. He'll know what to do." Princess Yunyang asked suspiciously, "This token can save the prince consort?" The imperial concubine said, "You just have to do as I say." Li residence. Li Mu put the tofu that the empress asked for into the boiling pot and sighed. Who would have thought that the empress of the great Zhou, a seventh realm transcendent powerhouse, would not be in the palace but sit here and eat hot pot with them? Most of the food in the palace was exquisite. The special feature was that the quantity was small and the presentation was very particular. Of course, the taste was not bad. Needless to say, the culinary skills of the imperial chefs were top-notch. Those who could cook in the palace were all at the top of the industry. The palace cuisine used the best ingredients and had the most meticulous processing. Li Mu was fortunate enough to eat it twice and it was really a pleasure. In comparison, hot pot was much simpler. Some simple vegetables were put in the pot and boiled. In terms of taste, it was naturally incomparable to the delicacies in the palace. However, when a few people gathered together, their faces flushed red from the heat, and they fought over a piece of cooked tofu. This kind of different atmosphere was something that could never be experienced in the palace. When she was eating in the palace, no one dared and no one had the right to sit with her. Li Mu stole a glance at the empress. He couldn't help but wonder if the empress had a twin sister who looked just like her. The one in the palace was the empress and the one outside was her sister. Li Mu scooped up a piece of meat for himself and said, "Today the Zongjing Temple's final trial of Cui Ming should be over soon." The empress put down her chopsticks and looked in the direction of the imperial clan temple. She counted with her fingers, and her beautiful eyebrows suddenly furrowed. Li Mu noticed her strange behavior and asked, "What's wrong?" The empress stood up and said, "I'm going back to the palace." As soon as she finished speaking, her figure disappeared in front of Li Mu and Xiaobai. Xiaobai's mouth was stuffed with food, and she swallowed it with great difficulty. She exclaimed, "Sister Zhou is so awesome." Li Mu patted her head and said, "You eat first. I'll go to the palace." The Empress originally planned to avoid the matter of Cui Ming here, but after only one night, she changed her mind. It seemed that something had happened at the Imperial Clan Temple. Li Mu remembered Zhou Zhong's reminder, so he walked out of the house and went straight to the palace. At the Imperial Clan Temple. The final trial of Cui Ming's case was held today at the Imperial Clan Temple. Many officials gathered in the Imperial Clan Temple to listen to the trial. King Shou looked at the old party members with a helpless expression and asked, "The crimes committed by Prince Consort Cui are enough for him to die 100 times. Tell me, what should I do? If I kill him, he's one of us. If I don't kill him, I'll be bending the law for my own benefit. How am I going to explain it to His Majesty and the people? I'm so troubled." The Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Personnel asked, "Is there still no news from the princess and the dowager?" Someone said, "The princess went to the palace yesterday to beg the dowager for help. I heard that the dowager went to see His Majesty, but His Majesty wasn't in the palace." "He didn't return last night?" "Ah, His Majesty didn't return last night?" If His Majesty didn't return to the palace, where else could he have gone? Could it be the Zhou family? Impossible, His Majesty has long lost contact with the Zhou family. He must be hiding from the dowager and the princess. It's obvious that His Majesty doesn't want to get involved in this matter. The Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Personnel coughed and said, "Don't talk about His Majesty. The most important thing now is Assistant Minister Cui." King Shou waved his hand and said, "I can't save him, but I can't not save him either. Who can tell me what I should do?" Zhou Zhong said faintly, "We can't save Assistant Minister Cui. If we save him, it will implicate King Shou. Moreover, King Shou can only save him for a while. When the time comes, King Shou will be implicated and the Imperial Clan Temple will change hands. Assistant Minister Cui's case still needs to be retried, so let's not waste our efforts." King Shou said, "What Assistant Minister Zhou said makes sense. Why don't we just forget about it?" As soon as he said that, an Imperial Clan Temple official ran in and announced loudly, "Princess Yunyang has arrived." "Greetings, Princess." When Princess Yunyang walked in, everyone greeted her. Princess Yunyang bowed to King Shou and said, "Greetings, uncle. You may dispense with the formalities." King Shou waved his hand and said, "Have you found a way to save the prince consort?" Princess Yunyang nodded and said, "I found it." King Shou was stunned for a moment before he reacted. He said in disbelief, "You found it?" Princess Yunyang took out the golden token and said, "Uncle, please take a look." When he saw the golden token, King Shou realized something. He patted his head and said disappointedly, "How could I forget about this?" Princess Yunyang said in surprise, "Uncle, you don't seem too happy?" King Shou sighed and said, "I'm just blaming myself. If I had thought of this earlier, the prince consort wouldn't have to suffer so much." The imperial noble consort didn't tell her the use of the token. Princess Yunyang quickly asked, "Uncle, can this token really save the prince consort?" King Shou took the token and weighed it in his hand. He nodded and said, "This is a token that the late emperor ordered the Ministry of Works to make with meteoric iron in order to reward the important officials of the imperial court. The token is also plated with a layer of fine gold. The holder of this token will be exempted from the death penalty unless they commit treason. There are a total of 13 death exemption tokens. The imperial noble consort was very favored by the late emperor. It seems that the late emperor also gave her one?" Someone asked, "Can the imperial noble consort's token save Assistant Minister Cui?" King Shou nodded and said, "As long as the imperial noble consort is willing, this token can save anyone." When the officials of the old party heard this, they were all delighted. The Assistant Minister of Personnel asked, "Can this token absolve Assistant Minister Cui of his crimes?" King Shou said, "It can, but it can't. Those who use the death exemption token will be stripped of their post and salary. This token can save his life, but he will no longer be the Assistant Minister of the Secretariat. He will only be the Prince Consort in name but not in reality. The Imperial Court will have to take back his residence and no longer give him the salary of a Prince Consort." Cui Ming was the Assistant Minister of the Secretariat. This position allowed them to be the first to know about the state's affairs. They could control the Imperial Court through the decisions of the Secretariat. After the incident in Yang County, the Assistant Minister of Personnel used Cui Ming to order the Imperial Court to reward the evil spirit. Once he lost this position, the old party would lose a large part of their control over the Imperial Court. In other words, even if he could keep his life, he would be useless to the old party. The assistant minister of personnel sighed and said, "This is already the best ending." Moments later, in the imperial clan estate at the entrance of the prison, Zhang Chun blocked King Shou's path and shouted angrily, "What? You want to release Cui Ming? Cui Ming committed such a grave crime and you want to release him? Do you have no respect for the law?" King Shou held up the token and said, "This is the death exemption token granted by the late emperor. Those who hold this token will be exempted from the death penalty except for those who have committed treason. This is the law." Zhang Chun said loudly, "You are using the death exemption token from the late emperor. What are you doing to His Majesty?" King Shou snorted and said, "A ruler doesn't joke. The death exemption token represents the dignity of the imperial family and the Great Zhou. As long as the Great Zhou still exists, this token will be effective. Those who see this token will be the same as seeing the late emperor. Those who resist this token will be the same as resisting the imperial edict. Those who resist the edict will be executed and the three races will be exterminated." Zhang Chun stepped aside and extended his hand. "Please." When Li Mu arrived at the imperial clan office, he learned from Zhang Chun that Cui Ming had returned with Princess Yunyang. At the critical moment when the trial was about to begin, Princess Yunyang sent the death exemption token and exempted him from the death penalty. Although Cui Ming lost his position, the prince consort's residence, and his salary, he kept his life. At this moment, Li Mu finally understood the meaning of Zhou Zhong's words. It was impossible to say that everyone was equal before the law. The death exemption token granted by the late emperor was a privilege for these people. With the death exemption token, as long as they didn't rebel, they could be exempted from the death penalty even if they committed murder or arson. With the death exemption token, they could become an outlaw. This wasn't a special case in the Great Zhou. Li Mu knew that in the world he came from, this kind of thing happened a lot in history. However, the death exemption token in that world was called the Red Ink Iron Certificate. The holder of the Red Ink Iron Certificate could be exempted from the death penalty 9 times, and his descendants could be exempted from the death penalty 3 times. This was something that really happened in history. This of course destroyed the fairness of society and the fairness of the law. However, the law of this world was meant to serve a small number of people. In essence, the country was still governed by people and not by the law. Zhou Zhong proposed that the powerful were punished the same as the common people. Not only did he lose his position, but he also almost lost his life because the law protected the powerful, not the common people. Zhang Chun gritted his teeth and said, "There are 37 lives in the Chu family. A lousy token in exchange for 37 lives. This damn death exemption token. I heard it." Prince Shou walked out from the side and said, "You dare to say that the death exemption token granted by the late emperor is a lousy token? Zhang Chun, I finally got something on you. What did I say just now?" Zhang Chun looked at Li Mu and asked, "Li Mu, did you hear it?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "No." Zhang Chun looked at Prince Shou and said, "I didn't say anything. Your Highness, don't slander me." Prince Shou snorted at Zhang Chun and said, "I'm in a good mood today. I can't be bothered to argue with you." Zhang Chun gritted his teeth and said, "Don't be happy too early. I won't let that bastard Cui Ming go." King Shou shrugged and said with disdain, "What else can you do? Although a death exemption medallion can only be used once, do you have anything on Assistant Minister Cui? Can you prove that he was the one who framed the Zhejiang prefectural governor? If you can't prove it, then stop boasting in front of me." He glanced at Li Mu and Zhang Chun and said, "Let's go home and watch the opera." In the past 20 years after her death, she had no other feelings in her heart other than hatred towards Cui Ming. As long as she could kill Cui Ming, she was even willing to let her soul dissipate. This was the biggest difference between Su He and Madame Chu. In Mrs. Chu's heart, there was only ruthless killing intent. However, the feeling that Su He gave Li Mu was that of a living person. She had joy and anger, resentment and worry, and she was also mischievous. She often teased Li Mu until his face turned red. Although they had both died once as spiritual bodies, Madame Chu lived for hatred while Su He lived for herself. Li Mu walked out of the Zongjing temple. He didn't go out of the palace. Instead, he walked towards Xiangyang Palace. Before returning to the North County, he needed to inform the Empress. Nominally, he was the arrestor of the Luoyang government and the imperial censor of the palace. However, his most important identity was the Empress's internal guard. The Luoyang government and the censorate couldn't control him. Shangguanli stood outside the gate of Shangyang Palace. Li Mu walked over and said, "I have something to discuss with Her Majesty." Shangguanli turned and walked into the main hall. Soon she came out and said, "Let's go in." Li Mu walked into the main hall and found that Mr. Mei and Madame Chu were both there. Madame Chu's breath was extremely unstable. Obviously she already knew that Cui Ming had been released. Li Mu walked to her and said, "I hope you don't blame Her Majesty. Her Majesty can't change the fact that Princess Yunyang took out the death-free golden medallion. Even the Empress couldn't do anything about the former Emperor's death-free golden medallion. Although her surname was Zhou and not Xiao, she still had to address the former Emperor as father. If she didn't acknowledge the former Emperor's death-free golden medallion, she would be unfilial. In history, there was once an emperor of the great Zhou dynasty who gave a golden whip to his important officials. Even the later emperors had to be wary of him. The emperors of a country were all people who wanted to leave their names in history. No one wanted to bear the name of being unfilial. Moreover, the emperor's promise was the country's promise in the eyes of everyone. Even if everyone thought that the death-free golden medallion was unreasonable, the imperial court had to abide by it since it existed. After Madame Chu calmed down, she said, "I don't dare to blame Her Majesty. Cui Ming killed my entire family. Even if my soul is destroyed, I will make Cui Ming pay with his life. Don't be impulsive." Li Mu looked at Madame Chu and said, "I will think of a way to deal with Cui Ming." It was obviously not a good idea for Madame Chu to go against Cui Ming. She had just advanced and her strength was not stable. Cui Ming had been in the creation realm for many years and was not weak. He probably had many trump cards. Chapter 281. Li Mu packed up his things and waited for Xiao Bai in the courtyard. When he thought of Cui Ming's ending, he still felt some regret. In fact, he originally wanted to deal with Cui Ming himself without Su He doing anything. At that time, Su He would not have to come to Chengdu and would not have to see Cui Ming. The incident from 20 years ago would also not cause her any harm. He did not expect that the great Zhou actually had something like a death exemption medallion. In order to punish Cui Ming, he had planned for half a month. He had written a script to create public opinion, and he had also coaxed and pestered the 6 officials of the Imperial Secretariat. After much difficulty, he finally sent Zhang Chun to the Imperial Clan Temple and successfully took down Cui Ming. In the end, he lost to a broken medallion. There were too many misdeeds left behind by the previous emperor. After one was dealt with, another one would appear. It was impossible to guard against it. If he lived for a few more decades, the great Zhou would be destroyed by his hands sooner or later. A piece of scrap metal could destroy the justice of the law. It was the biggest stain on the great Zhou's law and could not be tolerated. When he returned from the northern county, he would sooner or later turn those medallions into real scrap metal. Xiao Bai walked out of the room with a small bag on her back. She happily said, "Benefactor, I'm done packing. Let's go." Li Mu looked at the bulging bag on her shoulder and said helplessly, "We're not moving. Why are you bringing this?" Xiao Bai tightened the bag and said, "This is a gift for Sister Lu and Wanwan." Although the little fox was usually a little silly and dull, she was very considerate. Li Mu did not say anything else. He was about to leave when he suddenly thought of something. He asked Xiao Bai, "When we return to the northern county, if Sister Lu asks you if I've been fooling around in Chengdu, how will you answer?" Xiao Bai said without hesitation, "Other than me, there are no other little fox spirits by your side." "Very good." Li Mu patted her head and said, "Let's go." Not being a womanizer was completely different from not having a woman by his side. In addition to Mr. Mei, Li Mu had close contact with her friends in the great music bar, including Miao Miao Yinin, Little 7, 16 and the Queen, who had come here twice for free meals. Although Li Mu had a clear conscience, he still wanted to give Xiao Bai a heads up in advance so that she wouldn't stupidly shoot her mouth off and say something she shouldn't. Now, it seemed that the little girl was not as foolish as Li Mu had imagined. The two of them left the city and walked out of the no-fly zone outside the divine capital. Li Mu looked back at the distant divine capital and took out 2 high-level talismans. He handed one to Xiao Bai and stuck the other to himself. However, in the divine capital, with His Majesty protecting him, he had no chance to do so. Li Mu's departure from the divine capital was exactly what he wanted. Cui Ming asked, "Where did he go?" The servant said, "From the direction he left the city, it should be the North County. North County? Chui Ming's face darkened when he heard this. The North County meant a lot to him. The North County was his starting point. He had taken his first step in the North County and walked step by step to where he was today. However, the North County was also his final destination. Because of his carelessness in the North County more than 20 years ago, his 20 years of accumulation and hard work had gone to waste. Chui Ming muttered, "Li Mu is as cunning as a fox. Many people in the divine capital hate him to the bone and want him to die without a complete corpse. Why would he suddenly leave the divine capital and go to the North County? Could it be?" Chui Ming suddenly woke up. Could it be that he wants to find Suhi? The moment he thought of this, his face turned completely gloomy. Madame Chu had already made him lose everything. If the fact that he had killed Suhi in order to climb up to the Chu clan was exposed, even the death exemption medallion would not be able to save his life. He could either leave the divine capital now, or Li Mu would leave the divine capital and never come back. He could let him and Suhi, who was very likely to become a ghost cultivator, stay in the North County together forever. Chui Ming asked in a low voice, "Has Elder Lu come back?" The servant shook his head and said, "No." Chui Ming was puzzled. He had sent Elder Lu to the North County to investigate Chu Yun'er and Suhi. It had been more than half a month and there was no news from him. As a fifth realm cultivator, as long as he left the divine capital and did not offend the 4 sects and 6 schools of Buddhism and Taoism, he could do whatever he wanted in any county. It was unlikely that anything had happened to him. However, if nothing had happened, why had there been no news at all for so many days? Chui Ming paced in the courtyard. After Elder Lu left, there was no one around him that he could use. However, Li Mu and Suhi were bound to die. If they did not die, Chui Ming would be the one to die. Chui Ming's expression changed for a while. Finally, he gritted his teeth and flipped his hand. A palm-sized bronze mirror appeared in his hand. He walked to the study and bit his fingertip. Using blood as ink, he wrote a few lines on the bronze mirror. Then he put down the bronze mirror and crossed his hands. After forming a few seals, he sent his spirit energy into the bronze mirror. A white light flashed on the bronze mirror, and the blood-red words on it slowly disappeared, as if they were being swallowed by something. Imperial Palace. In the Imperial Garden. The garden was full of flowers. The Empress walked slowly among the flowers. Mr. Mei walked in from outside and said, "Your Majesty, Li Mu has left the divine capital." In the short time that he left, there were many movements in the southern and northern courtyards. Do we really not need to send people to protect him? The Empress smiled and said, "He's not as weak as you think. Even 1,000 illusion Shanren died in his hands. What can those people do to him? You've seen him bully others, but when have you seen others bully him?" Mr. Mei thought about it carefully and realized that it was true. Although Li Mu had offended many people, those who dared to bully him did not end up well. Being beaten with a cane was a light punishment. Those who were more serious would not be able to keep their heads. Those who were more serious would be chopped into ashes on the street. The prince consort of Princess Lianyang lost his official position and had his property confiscated. Many people in the court called him Her Majesty's little fox after betraying him. Mr. Mei recalled the process of meeting Li Mu. He spoke softly, was good-looking, liked to laugh, did things in a straightforward manner, was righteous, and did not want to compromise. Who would have thought that he was also full of tricks when he was up to no good? Thinking of this, she inadvertently glanced at the Empress. She saw a faint smile on the Empress's face. At that moment, the beauty of the Empress even overshadowed the flowers in the garden. Mr. Mei was dazed for a moment. Ever since she married the Crown Prince, she rarely saw such a smile on the Empress's face. Chapter 282. Shindu. 20 years ago, the prince consort Chui Ming killed his wife and exiled her family. After Princess Yunyang took out the death exemption medallion bestowed by the late emperor, Chui Ming was released from the ancestral temple. The people's discussion gradually died down. The play Qin Shimi, which was very popular in Shindu, was also banned under the instructions of the old party. This play involved the prince consort, the princess, and even the old consort. It was suspected of insinuating and smearing the reputation of the royal family. All the major theaters were not allowed to perform this play anymore. Those who violated the rules would be punished according to the law. Ever since a few theaters were banned and closed down, Qin Shimi, which was popular for a while, was no longer sung in Shindu. Although the people did not dare to say it out loud, they could not help but laugh in their hearts. What insinuating and smearing? It was all nonsense. Reality was worse than the play. In the play, Xianxia abandoned his wife and children and ended up dying a horrible death. Prince Consort Shui, who was a traitor, did all kinds of evil things. He was 1,000 times more hateful than Xianxia. In the end, he still got away with it and continued to be a relative of the royal family. Chui Ming's case came to an end. More major events were happening in Chengdu every day. After the reform of the imperial court selection system, the first imperial examination became the most important thing. The talents recommended by the 36 counties gradually gathered in Chengdu. What happened a few days ago would soon be forgotten. North County. Baiyun Mountain. When Li Mu followed Yuzhen back to the mountain last time, the disciples of the ancestral court of Fulu School had already seen him. After Li Mu explained his intentions, 2 disciples personally brought him and Xiao Bai to Baiyun Mountain. The 4 of them landed on the square in front of the palace on Baiyun Mountain. Someone in the palace sensed them and 2 people walked out. One was an old man and the other was an old woman. The old woman on the right was called Hua Yangzi. She was the one who brought Li Mu and Lu Hanyan to tour the entire Baiyun Mountain. After greeting each other, the old woman looked at Li Mu with a surprised gaze. The last time he saw him, he had only just condensed his spirit. It had only been 2 months, but the aura on his body had already become extremely obscure. It was obvious that he had already stepped into the divine ability realm. For those with average aptitude, it would take 10 to 20 years or even longer to advance from astral focus to divine ability, but he only took 2 months. This kind of cultivation speed was simply terrifying. It was comparable to the top geniuses of the ancestral court. Although the speed of those geniuses entering the middle realm was fast, but that was because they had more than 10 years of accumulation. The last time she saw Li Mu, he was just an ordinary divine condensation cultivator. Without a doubt, he must have encountered a great opportunity in these 2 months. Everyone had their own fortuitous encounters. The old woman stopped thinking about it and said with a smile, "I'll take you to junior sister Lu's residence." On top of White Cloud Peak, there was a mountain with an abundance of heaven and earth spiritual energy. Most of the disciples on the mountain lived together. Only the elders and core disciples above the transcendent realm had the right to establish their own residence on the mountain. As the disciple of the first seat, Lu Hanyan's status was equal to that of the elders. The place where she lived was full of spiritual energy and beautiful scenery. It was a place that countless disciples and even many elders envied. At this moment, she was sitting at a stone table in the courtyard with one hand supporting her chin. She watched the flowing clouds leisurely float by in front of her eyes. White cranes flew among the clouds and cried out clearly. However, she was not in the mood to enjoy the scenery or cultivate. She was in a daze out of habit. The clouds floating by the distant mountain gradually transformed into the appearance of a person in her eyes. When she was young, she was sold to the music hall by her parents. She did not have enough to eat every day. She practiced the zither until she could not lift her arms. She gritted her teeth and endured it. Now she could not bear to miss a person. In these 2 months she wanted to go to the divine capital with Wan to find Li Mu more than once, but she also resisted this idea more than once. For the first time in more than 10 years she had found someone she could rely on, but she didn't want to completely rely on him. In order to have the ability to face some things with him, she had finally hardened her heart and made this decision. She absolutely couldn't give up halfway. That night, she watched him face a life and death crisis alone while she could only hide in a safe place. She did not want to experience it again. Wan rested her chin on her hands and sat across from her. She muttered, "I wonder how young master is doing in the Immortal's capital. Is he eating well? Is he wearing good clothes? Is he living well? Is he being bullied? Those bad people in the Immortal's capital love to bully people." Hearing Wan's words, Lu Hanyan could not help but worry. She had been in the divine capital for more than 10 years. She knew better than anyone what the divine capital was like. The imperial court there was dark, the officials were muddle-headed, the people were numb, and the children of the rich and powerful were lawless. If they committed crimes, they only needed to pay for it with silver. They did not need to be punished by the law. The students of the academy bullied women. Many women from good families were tainted by them. If she did not refuse to play the solo in the pavilion, she would not have been able to keep her innocence until today. With Li Mu's personality, he would definitely be at a disadvantage in a place like the divine capital. Thinking of this, Lu Hanyan could not help but worry even more. Wan shook her head and said, "I wonder where the young master is. Does he know any pretty girls?" Luckily Xiaobai is by his side. Lu Hanyin was worried but also a little angry. She said, when did he lack pretty girls by his side? It's been so long and there's no news at all. Maybe he has already forgotten about us. What? Before she could finish her words, she suddenly let out an ouch. She felt something hit her head. Lu Hanyin turned around but there was no one behind her. Wanwan looked behind Lu Hanyin. A strange light flashed in her limpid eyes. In the next moment, a look of surprise appeared on her little face. There was no one behind her, but Lu Hanyin was indeed attacked. Her expression changed slightly. She made a gesture with one hand and hit the empty space in front of her. He wanted to secretly appear beside her and give her a surprise, but he happened to hear her bad-mouthing him behind his back. He had kept his chastity for her for the past 2 months. Li Mu could not take it anymore. He lightly knocked on her head as a punishment. Facing Lu Hanyin's palm, he removed his concealment state and took the opportunity to hold her hand. He used all his mana to dissolve her attack. Li Mu interlocked his fingers with hers and said, "You're so ruthless. Are you trying to kill your husband?" "Young master." Wanwan had already jumped up from the stool and ran happily to Li Mu's side. Lu Hanyin allowed Li Mu to hold her hand. Her clear eyes flashed with a blazing surprise. Then she snorted and said, "It's been so long. You didn't even write a letter. Do you have other little foxes in Luoyang?" Li Mu looked behind him and said, "Xiaobai, testify for me." Xiaobai also removed her concealment state. She ran over and held Lu Hanyin's arm. She said, "I can testify that you didn't fool around in Luoyang. Other than me, there are no other little foxes." Lu Hanyin pinched her face and said, "You listened to him more than Wanwan. Did he teach you before he came?" Xiaobai shook her head and said, "I swear in the name of the divine fox. Young master really didn't fool around outside. The divine fox was Xiaobai's religion." Lu Hanyin obviously believed in Xiaobai's promise. She raised her eyebrows slightly and held Li Mu's hand tightly. She said, "Come in. I have something to say to you." Li Mu said, "I also have something to say to you." They walked into the room. The moment the door closed, the two bodies hugged tightly. Li Mu's longing that he had endured for 2 months suddenly exploded at this moment. This longing came not only from his heart, but also from his body. The body of pure yin and pure yang had a natural attraction. After tasting the sweetness of dual cultivation, he could no longer give up. The two kissed for a long time before their lips slowly parted. A faint blush appeared on Lu Hanyin's pretty face. She said, "Let's go out. Wanwan and Xiaobai are still outside." Li Mu was a little reluctant to part with her. He hugged her soft body tighter and said, "What are you afraid of? They are not outsiders." After being separated for so long, Lu Hanyin was even more reluctant to let go. She said softly, "Then let's hug for a while more." The two hugged each other tightly and quietly listened to each other's heartbeat. They didn't say a word, but it was better than 1,000 words. Lu Hanyin was still a little shy. After a few minutes, she pulled Li Mu out. Xiaobai was taking out the gifts she brought from Chengdu from a small bag and placing them on the table. "This is a hairpin for Sister Wanwan. This is rouge for Sister Hanyin. This is the flower seed that Benefactor and I bought in Chengdu. It will be beautiful after it blossoms." After distributing the gifts, she couldn't wait to plant the flowers in the flower bed outside with Wanwan. Wanwan watered the flower bed and asked, "When will these seeds bloom?" Xiaobai was stunned for a moment. Then she shook her head and said, "I don't know. When we were in Chengdu, Sister Zhou just waved her sleeves and they suddenly grew." Li Mu keenly sensed that his grip on his hand tightened. Lu Hanyin stood in front of the flower bed and looked at Xiaobai. She smiled and asked, "Which Sister Zhou?" Chapter 283. Xiaobai paused for a moment before saying, "That's right, that's right." Li Mu took the initiative to say, "It's Her Majesty the Empress." This time, it was Lu Hanyin's turn to be stunned. She couldn't believe her ears and even forgot to be jealous. She asked, "What did you say?" Li Mu explained, "You also know that when I was in North County, I did some things that were beneficial to Her Majesty. After coming to Chengdu, Her Majesty valued me very much. One time, Her Majesty went on a private tour and happened to come to our house. Xiaobai met her at that time." At this moment, what he said to Lu Hanyin was the truth. However, he tactfully chose to hide the fact that he was ravaged by the Empress in his dream and was caught by her in his wet dream. Without waiting for her to ask in detail, Li Mu asked in return, Don't tell me you suspect that I have some kind of ambiguous relationship with Her Majesty? Lu Hanyan pinched his waist and said angrily, "Don't offend Her Majesty." Li Mu said, "It's okay. This is North County. She can't hear." Lu Hanyan stomped her feet. "That's still not okay." Li Mu said, Okay. I won't say any more. I'll listen to you." The men of Great Zhou might not be convinced that a woman was the empress, but Li Mu knew that many women in Great Zhou respected and worshipped the empress. In addition to Shangguan Li, Lord Zhang's daughter also seemed to regard the empress as her idol. He didn't expect that even Lu Hanyan would be so protective of her. If they knew that the empress was not only dignified but also had an S side, the image in their hearts would probably immediately collapse. Hearing that Her Majesty took good care of Li Mu, Lu Hanyan was finally relieved. As for whether the two of them had any other relationship, she didn't have a trace of doubt at all. The empress was the symbol of nobility, majesty, and holiness. As long as she had such thoughts, she felt that it was an unforgivable sin. After putting on the identity of the empress, there was no need for Li Mu to explain who Big Sister Zhou was. He sized up Lu Hanyan with a glance and said in disbelief, "You have mystical powers so quickly?" A moment ago when Lu Hanyan attacked him, Li Mu discovered that her cultivation had already reached the middle realm. Li Mu himself had done countless good deeds in the divine capital. He had absorbed the willpower of countless commoners, spent countless spirit jades, and worked like a horse for the empress. With her help, he had been able to upgrade his divine ability in 2 months. After arriving at Mount Baiyun, he realized that Lu Hanyan's improvement in the past 2 months was even greater than his. Lu Hanyan said with a little pride, "In the past 2 months I have been cultivating well. Master has also helped me a lot in my cultivation." As she spoke, she looked at Li Mu and asked in confusion, "Why are you also upgrading so quickly?" After consuming a lot of the sect's resources and with the help of her master, she was able to advance a few days ago. She thought that when Li Mu came back and saw that her cultivation had surpassed his, he would be shocked. But what she didn't expect was that just like her, he had also advanced to the middle realm. Li Mu glanced at her and said, "Do you think you are the only one who has been cultivating well?" He actually said this with a little guilty conscience. In the past 2 months he had only cared about fighting with the officials, the rich and the old parties. Where would he find the time to cultivate hard? He had only used the time that others cultivated hard to take shortcuts. On the surface he didn't seem to have guided qi cultivation, but the empress was a 7th realm elite. Casually hugging her thigh for a while could save him years of hard cultivation. Lu Hanyan had hugged Yu Zhenzi's thigh, but the empress's thigh was obviously longer and fairer than Yu Zhenzi's. Lu Hanyan said doubtfully, "That's impossible. Even if you didn't eat or drink for the past 2 months and absorbed the spiritual jades all the time, it's impossible for you to break through so quickly. You must be hiding something from me." After not seeing him for 3 days, she had a whole new level of respect for him. When it came to cultivation, Li Mu could easily fool Lu Hanyan in the past. After cultivating on Mount Baiyun for 2 months, the current Lu Hanyan was obviously not so gullible anymore. Li Mu said in amusement, "Actually, it's nothing much. I originally didn't want to break through so quickly. It was Her Majesty who helped me. Her Majesty is a 7th realm transcendent elite. She is as powerful as your sect master. This kind of thing is nothing to her." Lu Hanyan said in surprise, "Why is Her Majesty so good to you?" Li Mu said, "I exchanged all of this with my own hard work. You don't know, but in the past 2 months in Chengdu, I worked like a horse for Her Majesty. I gave my all and did so many things in exchange for such an opportunity." Lu Hanyan held his hand and said sympathetically, "It's been hard on you?" "It's not hard at all." Li Mu shook his head and said, "Only when I become stronger can I have the ability to protect you. Although it's hard to work for Her Majesty is also very generous. She let me be an internal guard. Not only did she give me cultivation resources, but she also rewarded us with a 5-sectioned house. In the future when you and Wanwan come back, you will have a big house to stay in." Lu Hanyan said in surprise, "A 5-sectioned house? Where is it?" Li Mu said, "The North Garden." Lu Hanyan was shocked. With her savings she probably couldn't afford a 5-sectioned house in Chengdu, let alone the North Garden where the high officials and nobles lived. Without a certain status, one couldn't afford a house in that kind of place even if they had the money. They are Zhu Tsong, the son of the director of the Ministry of Rights, Yang Xiu, the son of the director of the Ministry of Justice, Wei Peng, the son of the vice director of the Ministry of Revenue, and the grandson of the minister of Taichung Temple. Li Mu shook his head and said, "They've been quite honest recently." Lu Hanyan looked at him and asked, "You know them?" Li Mu nodded and said, "I know them. These scum like to bully people. After I taught them a lesson they became much more honest. They hide when they see me on the street," Lu Hanyan said in disbelief. "You taught them a lesson. They're the sons of officials. They don't need to be punished for breaking the law. They can pay for it with silver." Yang Xiu's father is the director of the Ministry of Justice. When they're in the Ministry of Justice they can turn black into white, Li Mu explained. The Silver Act has been abolished. Back then His Majesty wanted to abolish the Silver Act, but many officials objected. Later I beat up their sons, grandsons and so on and then compensated them with silver. It was reasonable and legal. The director of the Ministry of Justice didn't punish me, so those officials took the initiative to ask for the abolition of the Silver Act. Actually, the director of the Ministry of Justice isn't that bad. Most of the time he's very reasonable. Lu Hanyan was stunned and asked, "The silver law has been abolished?" Li Mu nodded and said, "It's been abolished a long time ago." Lu Hanyan was silent for a long time before she accepted this fact. She thought for a while and said, "There's also the students of the academy. The academy has a high status. The officials of the imperial court are all their students. Now the students of the academy are morally corrupt. They often bully the musicians in the workshop. You can't have a conflict with them," Li Mu said. "A few days ago, Little Seven was almost molested by a student of the academy. Later I caught a few scum of the academy and chopped off their heads. Now the students of the 3 academies are honest. In the future the imperial court will no longer choose officials from the 4 academies. The academies monopolizing the imperial court has become history. Too many things had happened in the Luoyang in the past 2 months." Lu Hanyan couldn't come back to her senses. She was silent for a long time before she said, "There's another person who's more terrifying than the ones I just mentioned. He's called Zhou Chuchu. He's a member of the Zhou family and the empress's younger brother. He's arrogant and domineering in the Luoyang and won't shy away from any evil." Li Mu nodded and said, "This guy is indeed more arrogant than the others. Not only did he kill someone on the street, he even dared to threaten the victim's family. He's simply lawless. So, I simply struck him to death with a thunderbolt to prevent him from harming the people?" Lu Hanyan stared blankly at Li Mu and asked, "Is this what you meant by a trivial matter?" Chapter 284. Although Lu Hanyan trusted Li Mu completely, she still could not believe what he had just said. Those hedonistic sons of rich families were tyrannical and lawless in Fairy's capital. Lu Hanyan had grown up hearing about their misdeeds. What exactly did these people go through to change their personalities in just 2 months? As long as she could remember, there had been a law of paying for crimes. Many officials had proposed to abolish it, but in the end there had been no result. How could it be abolished so suddenly? The academy no longer had a transcendent status, and the young ruffian of the Zhou family, Zhou Chu, was dead. Were these all the trivial things he had done in the past 2 months? Lu Hanyan looked at Xiao Bai and asked, "Is what he said true?" Xiao Bai nodded and said, "It's true. The people of Luoyang like you very much. When we buy things on the street they don't even take our money." After the shock, Lu Hanyan was only left with worry. She looked at Li Mu worriedly and asked, "You've offended so many people. Where will you go in Luoyang in the future? Why don't you quit being an official? We'll stay in Beiju. You can cultivate with me on Mount Baiyin." Li Mu smiled and said, "Don't worry. You know how many treasures I have. Besides, Her Majesty will protect me in Luoyang. It's the safest place in Great Zhou." Li Mu and Lu Hanyan did not walk the same path of cultivation. She had a master who was at the peak of Dongxian and had a purine body like her. Lu Hanyan was destined to inherit the mantle of Yuzenzi. The resources of the ancestral court of Fulu School were at her disposal. However, Li Mu's cultivation depended on himself. The faith of the people was the foundation of his cultivation. Since he stood on the side of the people, he naturally had to stand on the opposite side of the privileged class. It was inevitable that he would offend people. Fortunately, he had the Empress and his own trump cards were not weak. Luoyang seemed dangerous but it was also safe. After comforting Lu Hanyan for a while, she finally dispelled her worries. After 2 months of not seeing each other, Lu Hanyan had made rapid progress, and Wanwan was not bad either. Her cultivation had already reached the spirit condensation realm, and because of her Ling Tong, her strength was far beyond the spirit condensation realm. Just now when Li Mu was invisible, Lu Hanyin didn't discover him, but he couldn't hide from Wanwan's eyes. If Wanwan were to advance to the middle realm one day, her spirit eyes would probably evolve as well. After not seeing each other for 2 months, Xiaobai had endless things to talk to them about. Seeing that it was getting late, Li Mu and Lu Hanyin looked at each other and understood what each other meant. The two of them stood up at the same time and said to the two girls, "It's getting late, you should rest early." After a while, the two of them sat cross-legged on the bed in Lu Hanyin's room. Their hands were clasped together, and mana flowed back and forth between their bodies through their hands. Traces of heaven and earth spiritual qi were attracted and quickly entered their bodies. After 2 months, Li Mu once again experienced the joy of duo cultivation. Cultivation was a boring thing, but duo cultivation of yin and yang brought a special sense of pleasure to both the body and the soul. This might be the reason why they were addicted to duo cultivation. The next day, the two of them didn't wake up until late in the morning. After that, Li Mu rode on his sword to Qingshen Peak. After being notified by the disciples guarding the peak, Hanja quickly walked out of the Taoist palace of Qingshen Peak. He strode over and patted Li Mu on the shoulder and asked, "How was Luoyang?" Li Mu smiled, "It was fine." He looked around and didn't see the figure that often followed behind Hanja. He asked, "Where's junior sister Qin?" Speaking of junior sister Qin, Hanja looked helpless and said, "She didn't cultivate properly and always followed behind me. I asked her to go into seclusion. She's not allowed to come out until she reaches spirit concentration." As he spoke, he suddenly looked at Li Mu with a strange look, and found that he couldn't see through him at all. The last time they met, the two of them were spirit concentration. Now in Hanja's eyes, Li Mu was just like an ordinary person. Naturally, his cultivation couldn't have regressed. The only explanation was that Li Mu's cultivation had far surpassed his. Hanja probed, "You have divine power?" Li Mu didn't deny it and nodded slightly. Hanja was stunned for a long time before he gritted his teeth and said, "Freak, I thought junior sister Li was fast enough. I didn't expect you to be even faster." Li Mu was silent for a moment. His lips moved, but before he spoke, Hanja said, "I know what you want to ask. Junior sister Li isn't here. I've kept an eye out for you. She hasn't returned to the sect in the past 2 months. If you really want to see her, maybe you can come back in 4 months. In 4 months, it will be the triennial peak competition. Junior sister Li's strength is one of the best in Purple Cloud Peak. She should be back to support Purple Cloud Peak." After chatting with Hanja for a while, he went to supervise junior sister Qin's cultivation. Li Mu returned to White Cloud Peak again. Lu Hanyin was watering the flowers that Wanwan and Xiaobai planted yesterday. She asked, "Did you see your friend?" Li Mu nodded and said, "Yes." Lu Hanyin asked again, "Did you see Miss Li?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "I didn't go to Purple Cloud Peak. When I was talking to Hanja about her, he said she wasn't in the sect." In front of Lu Hanyin, Li Mu didn't deliberately hide anything. Their relationship was only 1 step away. If he hid it too much, it would show that he was guilty. It was better to be honest. Li Mu didn't continue this topic. He asked, "Hanja said that in 4 months, there will be a grand competition in the sect. Will you participate?" Lu Hanyin shook her head and said, "I don't think so. That's a competition for the younger generation. What would I do there?" Li Mu almost forgot that Lu Hanyin's status was equal to the elders of the various peaks. With her strength, it would be a bit of a bully for her to participate in such a competition. The grand competition's requirements were for young disciples under the age of 25. At this age, those who could reach the spirit convergence realm were already outstanding. Those who could reach the divine power realm were already top geniuses. They either had great talent or incomparable perseverance. There weren't many people like this in the ancestral court of Fulu School. Although talent was very important on the path of cultivation, it was very difficult to become strong with talent alone without hard work and the accumulation of years of cultivation. Although it was rare for young people to reach the spirit convergence realm, it wasn't that they didn't exist. However, the 5th realm cultivators Li Mu had seen were mostly middle-aged or old. Xiaoyu's situation was special. The youngest creation realm cultivator he had seen was Shangguan Li. However, she was 5 or 6 years older than Li Mu. If she hadn't been by the Empress side all year round, it would have been impossible for her to become a strong cultivator so early. The Empress wanted him to return to the divine capital before the imperial examinations. There were still 2 months before the examinations. Including the preparation time, there was plenty of time. Li Mu planned to stay in the North County for a few more days to accompany them. He stayed in Baiyin Mountain for 3 days and then went to the county city with Lu Hanyan. After leaving the North County city, Lu Hanyan handed the Yunyan Pavilion to Xianxia to manage. He didn't make a name for himself as a constable, but he was very talented in business. He didn't let down Lu Hanyan's trust. The Yunyan Pavilion's business was getting better day by day. Xianxia was so busy that he lost a lot of weight. However, he was more energetic and his eyes were shining. Li Mu didn't lack cultivation resources now. He spent some effort to guide him into the path of cultivation and gave him some Fulu and Dharma treasures to protect himself. Although he didn't have to do dangerous jobs anymore, he could still cultivate to protect himself. At the very least, he could strengthen his body and prolong his life. In the county city, Li Mu accompanied Lu Hanyan for 3 more days. He originally wanted to drink with the White Demon King and see his 2 nieces. However, he only saw the Green Bull Demon. From him, he learned that after Madame Bai came out of the ice coffin, the White Demon King and his family went out to play and hadn't returned yet. Li Mu was able to return to the county city. In the end, he returned to Yangqiu County with Lu Hanyan. This was the place where they knew each other. It was also the place where Li Mu had lived the longest when he first came to this world. In these few days, the 2 of them cherished this reunion very much. They were together for almost 24 hours every day. The progress of their relationship was only 1 step away. Li Mu wasn't in a hurry. For a woman, this matter was sacred and had a sense of ceremony. It had to be left until the night of the wedding. Their original plan was to leave this day for the day of their breakthrough. They would use each other's primordial yang and primordial yin to break through to the middle realm. However, no one expected that Lu Hanyan would enter the Fulu school and Li Mu would meet the Empress. The 2 of them had already broken through to the God Power realm. They definitely couldn't wait until the next breakthrough. On the 2nd day after returning to Yangqiu County, Li Mu left the city and went to Clearwater Bay. This time, other than returning to the northern region to see Lu Hanyan and Wanwan, he also had an important mission. That was to bring Su He back to the divine capital and send Cui Ming on his way. After leaving the city, Li Mu flew on his sword and arrived at Clearwater Bay in an instant. Landing in front of the familiar hut, Li Mu was stunned as he looked at the surroundings. The illusion that Su He had set up was gone. The house by the shore had collapsed. The surrounding trees were crooked and some had even been uprooted. More importantly, the deep pool that originally existed here had dried up. The altar at the bottom of the pool was still there, but it was almost destroyed. The female corpse on the altar was also gone. Li Mu's face was gloomy as he searched the surroundings. Not only did he not find Su He's presence, but he also didn't find the 2 female ghosts. He only found the reason why the pool where the altar was located had dried up. For some unknown reason, the river that flowed through the Gulf of Clearwater suddenly changed its course 2 li before it passed through the Gulf of Clearwater, bypassing the Gulf of Clearwater. In this way, without the suppression of the water vein, the formation on the altar at the bottom of the sea would immediately lose its effect. Unable to trap the female corpse underwater, Li Mu looked around and saw the mess by the shore of Clearwater Bay. Could this be caused by the battle between the female corpse and Su He after she escaped? Although they were of the same origin, one was a soul and the other was a physical body. They both wanted to devour each other's consciousness to reach perfection. When the 2 appeared at the same time, a great battle was unavoidable. Li Mu carefully thought about it and relaxed a little. After refining part of Thousand Illusions' soul force, Su He's strength was much stronger than that of the spirit corpse. If she stayed in the array, she would have a chance to retain her consciousness. Once she left the altar, she would be killed by Su He and her body would be taken over. Li Mu didn't have to worry about Su He at all. What he cared about now was where Su He had gone. After Li Mu advanced to a divine ability, he could already master it. This technique could divert a portion of fatal damage. For such an attack, it could divert all of it. After the first attack failed, more branches madly grew out of the poplar tree and attacked Li Mu at lightning speed. Li Mu unsheathed Bai and faced the attacking branches. There was a sound similar to metal clashing. Bai slashed at the branches, but only left a shallow mark. He did not expect the branches to be so tough. They were not inferior to magic items. Li Mu had never seen such a divine ability. A green light flashed in his hand and Bai disappeared. The Qingxian sword was in his hand. Li Mu raised his sword and slashed at the branches. This time, the branches attacking him were easily chopped off like tofu. Soon, only the bare trunk of the poplar tree was left. In the next moment, Li Mu suddenly felt his legs tighten. He looked down and realized that his legs were entangled by two vines that extended from the ground. He waved the Xianxia sword and two green lights flashed. Two thick vines were cut off by the Xianxia sword. Li Mu held the Xianxia sword in his hand and looked around. He realized that in a short period of time, he was surrounded by the shadows of trees. The trees in the forest surrounded him in layers. They were constantly changing their positions, implying some kind of formation. If they were allowed to form a formation, it would be very difficult for him to break the formation. Moreover, the person behind the scenes had not shown himself yet. Li Mu did not think too much. He took out a fulu and threw it into the air. Rumble. In the sky, the sound of thunder was loud. A huge purple thunder net came down from the sky. When the trees around Li Mu came into contact with the purple lightning net, they immediately turned into black ashes. Only a thick willow tree remained standing in its original place. A human face appeared on the willow tree. It was the face of an old man. He was staring at Li Mu with a horrified look. Green liquid flowed out from the corner of his mouth. This cultivator in the magical state, the strength of his Dharma treasure, the strength of his fulu, and the strangeness of his supernatural powers were completely beyond his imagination. He, who was seriously injured, wanted to take the opportunity to sneak attack this human cultivator and devour his essence, blood and soul to recover from his injuries. He did not expect to be at a disadvantage in such a short period of time. Not only did his injuries not recover, they even worsened. Everything in this trip to the North region was beyond his expectations. First, he found out that the soul of the woman that the prince consort asked him to find was still there. Moreover, she had already become a fifth realm ghost cultivator. Even though she had just entered the fifth realm, he suffered a lot. In the 100 years of cultivation, he had experienced many dangers. However, after entering the fifth realm, he had never been chased by a fourth realm cultivator. He had also never seen such a powerful fourth realm cultivator. Fortunately, this was his home ground. It was not difficult to shake off the cultivator behind him. As he fled, he turned back to take a look. This glance made his soul leave his body. He saw that the human cultivator's speed was even faster than his. In the process of chasing, the human cultivator was constantly closing the distance between them. He would probably catch up to him soon. The tree demon was shocked. He did not dare to be careless and released his abhijna with all his might. Wherever he passed, trees grew rapidly. The branches overlapped and completely sealed off his escape route. Li Mu's pursuit was blocked. He simply flew into the air above the forest. Looking down from above, the lush forest seemed to have become a whole. Suddenly it became quiet. There were no longer any strange movements in the forest. The tree demon had clearly concealed his aura and completely blended into the forest. No matter how Li Mu used his heavenly eye or opened his eyes, he could not discover him. Fifth realm demons could conceal their demonic aura. The demon-seeking talisman would not be of much use. He could be sure that the tree demon was still in the forest. However, he did not know where exactly he was. Li Mu's body descended slowly. He began to search the forest carefully. The forest was extremely quiet. It was so quiet that he could only hear his own footsteps. After a long time, his search was fruitless. Li Mu looked around. After confirming that there was no danger, he turned his back to a huge tree and rested for a short while. A human face gradually appeared on the tree behind him. A withered claw reached out silently from the tree trunk. Then, with lightning speed, it grabbed towards Li Mu's back. There was no time to react at such a short distance. The withered claw immediately made contact with Li Mu's body. However, it did not pierce through Li Mu's body as the tree demon had expected. It grabbed his heart and crushed it viciously. The claw was extremely fast. The moment it made contact with Li Mu's body, it seemed to have collided with an iron wall. With a crack, it directly snapped. Li Mu quickly turned around. He grabbed the wrist of the withered claw and stuck a fulu on it. He said indifferently, "Freeze." The withered claw remained in its extended position. The human face on the huge tree also became stunned. You're tuning in to the Phantom Sword Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.